Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start off with the interviews, and I think we all have some questions, kind of the standard sheet that we'll ask everybody, and if we can maybe start with you on the right. Bob, if you just want to introduce yourself and start with your questions. This is Bill Daniels.
Sure.
I'm
Bill.
familiar with Bill
Bob
from
Burns.
PRAC years ago.
Welcome to the interview process.
Thank you.
This is my last meeting, by the way.
I see. Is that a good thing?
I'd like to ask an opening question is, tell us about your previous or current experience serving on other boards or committees.
I'm still a active member in the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and I was the chair of that association for the first 2 terms of its inception. Since then, I haven't served on any city boards or commissions, but before that and during that time, I was active on several boards, including PRAC, the Parking Advisory, Downtown Parking Advisory Commission. I live in an area where what happens downtown directly affects where I live. We were instrumental in getting the 2-hour parking limitations implemented for visitor parking. I also worked with I did work with the city staff for 2 terms on Historic Review Board, and enjoyed that experience as well. And I was trying to remember how many terms I served on PRAC, but certainly it could have very well been 4 different terms with some. In fact, originally when I served on PRAC, it was run under the Administration of Public Works under Rick McClung.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. I'll skip back up. Bill, Chris Cook here. I'm one of the newest member on the committee. So, why do you want to be on this committee, and what strengths, background, or special abilities will you bring to the board?
As you may have noticed on my application, my career was in parks. I was in the operations side of parks in Portland, and so I spent close to 28 years in that capacity. And during that time, and since I've retired, I've always had a keen interest in helping the city of Oregon City either maintain or certainly look to the future on our park system. I was on the board PRAC when we last did our last master plan, and also we were on the board. I was on the board, that is, when we acquired our first park, and I don't know how many years that was, but Wesley Lynn Park. So those were some of the accomplishments of quite a few, actually, but those are the 2 that come to mind.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry it's late.
All right.
So when were you last on the Parks and Recreation Committee?
Well, I was just asking Sean when that might have been. Certainly, Dee Craig was the manager for parks.
10 years ago, roughly?
Yeah, I would say that's probably
Okay.
a good guess. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but I can just tell you right now that the pay rate has not gone up since.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So, what are some issues that you see in the city that you think are important right now?
Certainly, some of the issues come to mind. Some of the similarities that working in Portland when I was employed with Portland Parks is homelessness, and that has, of course, gravitated to the outside community, outlying communities, and I think that could be, some people would say, maybe number 1 of our issues that we need to look at. Certainly, the master plan needs to be addressed again and worked on. I think there's I don't know if it was a requirement or not, but certainly we need to update that master plan. Certainly, number 2, and I know that it will be coming. Dogs in parks is another issue that we're going to all be challenged with. Portland went through that whole issue and are still dealing with it. And Number 3 might be budgeting for improvements in the parks that we do have, and perhaps even land acquisition if we are looking at outlying positions as Oregon City continues to grow.
Good, thanks.
Mhm.
Could you elaborate on the dogs in the parks statement?
In what way?
How do you feel about that? I mean, I don't know what Portland went through, so.
Well, Portland, the commissioner actually, or the it wasn't a commissioner, he was the charge of the bureau, created a new position so he wouldn't have to answer the phone so often. But it became a I can't say a no-win position, but there's always more than one way to look at how to deal with a situation that many people have an opinion on. We ended up at the Bureau, and I was part of that process on a committee to come up with parks that we already existing in the community, the ones that perhaps could be used for dog off-leash areas. And of course, every neighborhood had a problem with their park being suggested, as well as people who applauded the decision. They can be easily overused and become mud baths, or they can be properly managed with rotations. Certainly large areas, fields even, certainly is one of the solutions. We've all probably been up to Columbia River Gorge and seen how they've managed to have that facility off the Sandy River where there's enough area for people to be able to not run down an area. But certainly dogs in parks is going to be a big issue, and I know we'll be challenged with that eventually, more so than we are now.
Thank you.
Well, first off, Bill, thanks for applying. I'm Mike Mitchell. Given your experience in Portland, what do you see as our biggest opportunities or deficiencies in Oregon City in our park system compared to what you saw in Portland?
That's a good question. I'm not so sure that, and I haven't been involved for at least on an advisory board to say, or commission, to say that I know all the issues or are aware of them. But certainly, as more and more people move into this community, which they will, and many of them have children, that, and there's also people who don't need improved playgrounds. They just want natural areas for passive recreation. So there's a challenge to meet both of those requirements with the parks that we have on inventory. We're lucky enough to have Newell Creek Canyon. We're lucky enough to have the Kanema Park area joining with Metro up in Kanema Park. So those are blessings. We have there's also inventory out there that certainly hasn't been looked at, or perhaps it has. I'm not sure what your focus has been as far as expansion for obtaining new parks, but we have the ability to increase our shall I call it land banking for more parks, because we will be getting larger as every year passes.
Great, thank you.
Kind of an obvious question, but one that we're going to ask anyway. Are you comfortable with public speaking and the ability to represent PRAC at city commission meetings and other events like that, or other places like that?
I'm not a natural gifted speaker, but I do have opinions, and I do try to express them with city. We're lucky enough to live in a community small enough that most of the time we can often be heard. And my first focus has always been on our neighborhood, because we have so much in our neighborhood. I'm talking about the number of parks. We have probably more parks in our neighborhood than any other neighborhood would have. We have charter parks, historic nature. We have parks even across the street at the library. So I think that's the focus that I my first priority is to make sure that the McLaughlin neighborhood is heard, and I had a meeting with Phil earlier on some issues concerning our neighborhood. But as in the past, I've enjoyed the focus on all the entire community of Oregon City to help represent a point of view.
Thank you.
So Oregon City has been severely underfunded for park maintenance. Do you have any fun ideas or off-the-wall ideas of how we could fund those deficits that keep coming up on us?
It's what I noticed in the city of Portland as well, that we're under a general fund. So there are services that are under the general fund, and certainly in Portland, and it's true here in Oregon City, that police and fire certainly have a priority when there's a need, when there's an emergency. So we're always, at least I would assume, that Oregon City is always going to be under shall I say, the budget is not always, even though there's one that's put out every year, it's not always met. We seem to lose some of that money each year, and for good reason, but it's tough to always predict how much. And I always look at the maintenance end because that's where I had spent most of my career in. But volunteerism, and we have some examples in our community of people who help as much as they can. I use the Promenade Park for an example, and we have people who end up doing what they can, whether it's removing leaves or trimming shrubs, and those are one way that we can make it fun for people. And we have a staff, we have a good crew leader, Jonathan Waverly, who's proficient in what his knowledge in landscaping and horticulture. And I think that the board that we've created, the Oregon City Parks Board, is probably the direction that we need to focus on for people who can gift money and have a mission statement that is focused on giving the city some help in maintaining our parks as well as improving them.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Bill. I think I worked with you on one of those cleanups down on the park down there.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. Since you're in one of the more active communities, I wonder if you could tell us if there's any perceptions or anything what people are thinking about our parks right now, and what's their attitude toward our parks from with your experience and being out of the park for a little while.
I think one of the reasons people choose to live in Oregon City is because of our unique neighborhoods and our parks. And I'll use Waterboard Park as an example, and most of us perhaps have spent some time there. And we've had some issues there, and there's still an issue about whether Public Works is going to be able to build above where they're currently located at. There's an issue about whether it's actually parkland or whether it's non-parkland, and that's a deciding point whether they go forward with their project. But certainly, people enjoy. Newell Creek Canyon is an amazing asset. I would say that there's so much diversity in our community with our parks that no matter what kind of enjoyment, passive or active recreation you need, it's certainly we are lucky. We're fortunate to have the system we have. Did that answer your question, or was there more to that?
I think so. I think that was good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are there any other questions for us or anything else you'd like to share?
There's bylaws that we have that in the term again is it 4 years? Am I correct?
It's 3
Matt?
years.
3 years. All right, very good. That was my main question, and we would, whoever the successful candidate might be, they would be able to get a packet of those kinds of ideas, bylaws, and meeting dates. All right.
Yeah, I know the bylaws. Well, everything now is on the website too.
Very good.
The bylaws, the master plan.
And are we close to looking at a new master plan or updating?
No, we updated it in, I think it was 2008 or 2009, and it hasn't come up again. I mean, we're at that point where we should be looking at it pretty soon. We just went through 2 park master plans, and I think the next major step would be funding the construction of those. We're kind of like at that point just before we built Wesley Lynn. All the money is being saved to try to build,
Not to acquire.
not to acquire,
acquisition, right.
not yet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's it. You run one over the other, and right now we've bought 2 major pieces of property, and then now it's time to. And the master plans are done.
Good.
All we need to do is start turning a shovel. So
All right. Well, thank you.
thank you for your
Appreciate
time. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
it. Bet.
See you soon.
All right.
Thanks,
We forgot to ask him.
Roger. I like your
Versus
question.
tree-topping.
I like that. That was a good twist. There really
For or
wasn't
against
here.
it.
I didn't want to ask, are you available?
Right, and I hated that question.
Yeah, don't.
Hi, Dakota.
Hi there.
So my name's Sean. I'm the chair of the committee, and we're going to start over on our right with Bob, and we've got kind of some pre-canned questions we'll ask you and kind of tell us a little bit about you as we go.
Welcome. I am Bob Burns. This is my last night on the committee, so time flies.
So you don't have to answer truthfully.
I'd like to ask you, why do you want to be on this committee? And what are your strengths, your background, special abilities that you could bring to this committee?
So I'd like to be on the committee. I live here. I've lived here for almost 10 years. I take advantage of the parks all of the time. And then in terms of strengths, I'm going to school for biology and environmental science. And so I spend a lot of time doing like scientific surveys and stuff kind of out of town and stuff like that. But I feel like we could do more stuff like that closer to where I live, kind of. Strengths are scientific background. I want to be on the committee because I love it here and want to put back in kind of what I've taken.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dakota. I'm Chris Cook.
Hi.
The newest member on the committee. I've been here. When was I appointed? It's
year?
been a year. Yeah.
1 year.
You're seeing that. It does go by fast. It really does.
You'll be the new kid real soon.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any previous or current experience serving on other boards or committees?
I don't. This is one of the first I've applied for. I'm also looking at the Oregon City School Board. My daughter is going to be in kindergarten next year, so I'm interested in breaking into kind of sitting on committees and being more active. I have been part of my the student government up at CCC, but that's about it.
Very good.
Well, we love newbies. So
Okay, cool.
I'm Blaine, and have you had a chance to go onto the Parks and Rec website?
Yeah, actually, I was like exploring it all week, trying to answer questions like that I had and get a feel kind of for what the whole realm of kind of what you guys do. And I couldn't find I couldn't answer my own personal questions about kind of what it is specifically that the committee does. I mean, I saw a lot of the activities that had been planned and things like that. But in terms of, yes, I have explored the website. It kept saying, site under construction. So, yeah, yes is the answer.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, thanks for your willingness to serve.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Mike Mitchell. So as a user of the parks and having young children, what do you see as the maybe the weaknesses and the strengths of our park system? Where do you think we could get better?
Well, the parks are great. They're pretty much all kind of in good, proximity of each other. There's pretty much a park wherever we go. I've nannied also for the last 10 years living here, and so pretty much whatever area of town I'm in, there's a park. Part of what I think could be improved, and this is coming from I study science. I'm really into biodiversity kind of things. Are more biodiversity in the parks, more kind of gardens, specific rose gardens or things like that. Just biodiversity, kind of more representation of different kind of plants and things like that. Mm-hmm. But pretty much, I love the parks. It took a long time to get that toddler bit built over at Chapin, Chapin, right? Yeah. But that was, other than that, no complaints.
So, having been around here for 10 years, mm-hmm. What issues do you see the city, and more broadly, not just this department, but the city facing right now? What are some of the kind of key issues that you see from your perspective?
The schools.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter hasn't gotten into the public. She goes up to Springwater, mm-hmm. Environmental science preschool right now. But I've been chatting a lot with a lot of parents I live up Holcomb, so I'm right across the street from Holcomb Elementary. And they've talked a lot about kind of not enough of certain types of programs, things like that, just budget mm-hmm. things. Other type, I don't know. I prefer to stay here in Oregon City and do everything here instead of going into Portland, because they have way more infrastructure problems with the roads and stuff. We have the waterfront project coming up, and I think that's going to be amazing when it's finished. I think it's going to bring up a lot of other mm-hmm. things. I went to the Riverwalk thing down at Clackamas Community College last week or the week before, and I'm super excited for that project to get started and be finished. But I think, that'll bring up a lot of construction issues, and everybody's going to be all mad and traffic and stuff. But I don't know what really issues I see.
Nothing burning, sticking out.
No
problem.
Yeah, and
maybe that's a great answer.
Just being aware that there are going to be those issues is a good thing. Boy, we're running out of good questions here for you. So why now? Why did you apply for being on PRAC at this time?
So I am finishing up my AGS over at CCC and transferring over to PSU and getting into their biology and environmental science department. And I want to work for the federal government, long-term position. But I really love Oregon City, a lot, more than any. I grew up in Aloha, far away from here, and I hated it. It wasn't a community, and I didn't have any investment in it, and I want to be involved. And like I was saying, in terms of just, the biodiversity thing, I would love to see a community garden. I would love to see just little, community involvement, like animal and plant surveys, things like that. And I am attempting now to head up a volunteer organization to kind of start doing those things within the city itself, and just felt like a good time.
So just as a quick question, do you use the park frequently, living out in Holcomb?
No, actually, the one that's right off Holcomb.
Yeah.
Right? No, we don't really go down there that much. Is there a community garden there?
No, there is a dog park there.
Yeah, we had actually. I just got a puppy, and we had recently found that there was a dog park just there. But I nanny up by Chapin, and so I usually go over there, and we're like way up on the hill on Holcomb, so it's like too far to walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, that really takes a lot of the good questions now. So, have you had a chance to get to a lot of the parks in the city and
I think so. We spent a lot of time at Rivercrest. I spent a lot of time at Oliver Clackamas and kind of the river trail over there. Chapin we use a lot, and the one that's right off Lynn on the left if you're going up the hill.
Singer?
Yeah.
Singer Creek.
Yes,
right.
yes. Yeah. And yeah, I think I've gotten to a good handful.
And I like to hear you when you said that some of the visions you have for some of the parks, well, I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I love all of the parks that I've been to. I feel like Rivercrest has that like great green space that kids totally use in the summer, and I've seen kids like playing ball and stuff out in the field and stuff. But there's a lot of like kind of like empty space there that is shaded, so it would be hard to have a garden, but could be something.
Well, as it comes back to me, I wanted to answer one of your questions. Kind of what is PRAC? So we're an advisory board to the commission. So first and foremost, at times the commissioners will send questions to us. For example, several years ago, they sent the dog park idea to us and said, do something. Mm-hmm. Give us a proposal, and 2-3 years later, we have 3 off-leash areas across the city. We've changed smoking policies in the park related to them. But then on the other hand, we come up with our own ideas as representatives of the community and then forward those up to the commission. Or we make the decisions here and they don't need to go that far. But generally it's to advise the commission. That's kind of the primary purpose. And we've got a kind of wide variety here of experience. And I serve on the school board budget committee also.
Awesome.
So when you mention that, I agree that that's a great place to get plugged into as well. Next Monday night, 6:00 at the district office is a budget meeting.
Right.
And people are welcome to sit in the back of the room, and you will be shocked at how dire it is.
Yeah, that's the feeling I've gotten from a lot of parents, just from Holcomb and stuff. And
I don't think people have any idea up at the schools until they go to one of these
Really?
meetings. When you're looking at a $70 million budget and you're debating over $300,000 at the end. It's sad. But anyway,
yeah.
So I encourage you to get plugged into those
definitely.
things. Do you have any other questions for us?
I don't think so. That was pretty much it. What exactly?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I know that you said you were thinking about getting some people together or putting something together. Are you aware there's a park foundation that's already, there's 4 of the members of us on there?
No.
So there's a nonprofit, Oregon City Parks Foundation, that's kind of separate from the city also.
Okay.
And
It's just called Parks Foundation?
Oregon City Parks Foundation.
Okay. I'll look that up. Yeah.
Definitely Roger and Mike and
Blaine.
Joyce and Blaine
Oh, cool.
are key members, and it gives another way that they can, well, for one, they can apply for grants that the city can't.
Right.
To do things.
Yeah. And so a lot of the reason that I wanted to do that, just briefly, I had no idea that those things exist. It's something that I'm super passionate about and want to get into, deeply involved in, and I had no idea. And then my school CCC will do these these volunteer things. I have no idea. I've been involved with Friends with the Trees for several years now, and they have really good marketing, and I'm trying to head up my own miniature version of that, because I feel like there needs to be more of a grassroots, on the ground, talking to people, kind of telling them why biodiversity or cleaning up the park or litter is bad, why these, talking to them kind of deal. So, but I'm definitely I'll look that up. I'm really interested in in what that does.
I've got your email address from your application, so we'll send you information about the foundation.
That would be amazing. Yeah, thank you so much.
And not to overload you, but we also have an Oregon City Trail Alliance, which is
You know, I did know about that one. Yeah, that one I have heard of.
I see what you did there. Good one, Blaine. Great. Thank you very
Awesome.
much for your time.
Thank you guys
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Perfect.
Have a good night.
You Wonderful.
You guys.
You got to go while
Get the plug
iron's
in.
hot, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You should let Roger go first this time. He's tired of sad questions.
Well, his question was so good in the first round.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did we steal that one?
Yeah, you did.
Did I steal it?
Somebody did.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Michael?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm the chair of PRAC, and we'll start to my left with Roger, and each of us have kind of some pre-canned questions we'll ask you, and
Okay.
feel free to ask questions back as we go.
Sure.
Expect canned answers. So.
So, Michael, what brings you to interviewing for this position on the PRAC committee?
I like the idea of community involvement, civic involvement. I moved here from the Hawthorne neighborhood 2 years ago. And when I lived in the Hawthorne neighborhood for 4 years, I didn't know a single person that lived around me. When I moved here to Oregon City, I knew all of my neighbors within 2 weeks. I love that, and it's something that I like to be more ingrained with, and this seemed like a nice way to go about it.
So, did you use your parks when you were living in Hawthorne? Did you use the parks around
Frequently.
the neighborhood?
Frequently.
Do you have any thoughts on the parks there compared to the Oregon City? Am I asking too many questions?
It's your last one. I was like, are you going down the list?
We're watching you, Roger.
A little payback. I'm sorry.
What was the question? How do the parks compare?
That's okay. I'll let.
Okay.
So, Michael, my name is Joyce.
Hello, Joyce.
And thanks for coming tonight. So what special strengths do you think you can bring to our committee?
Organization, strong work ethic, late nights. I'm typically up doing something on my computer until 11:30 anyway.
Well, we don't like the long meetings.
What's one more project?
Okay.
Do you have any?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, and a genuine need to help.
That's good.
All right, but why put in parks in particular?
Because I like parks. I think they're important. They're an equalizer of community. They're not good only for the local environment, but also the health. And as such, they need to be protected, improved, and maintained.
Great. Do you have any prior experience on other committees or boards?
Civically? No, always civilly, but never civically. They've always been professional and scholastic.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So as a user of Oregon City Parks, what do you see as the strengths or weaknesses or opportunities in our park system?
Strength in number, from what I've noticed. A lot of good, well-maintained, and expansive parks here in Oregon City. Opportunities are plentiful because they are, from the parks that I really enjoy, the maintenance. I think the opportunity is just in the maintenance. I don't really see as much as sheer improvement needed, but I like parks that are kept in sort of a raw state. That's why I love the Waterboard Park. It's also right behind my house. That's the one I walk most frequently. And what was the third point?
Opportunities?
Opportunity. Just the opportunity for more growth. The parks are sort of how you bring the community together. And I think that would be the best opportunity for them, to use them as community centers. Weather permitting.
Great. Yeah, right. We do have that.
Do in the
Thank you.
summer.
Yeah?
And really quickly, sorry if I can just interrupt. If you can try to speak towards the mic, just
Oh,
for
sure,
the
sure.
recording. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah.
There we go.
Have you had a chance to look at the website and look at the Parks and Rec?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that? Any questions? And
No. Everything was pretty straightforward.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. About the city, do you see any issues? The city needs to address beyond the parks. Any issues?
Well, I think every city around Portland has to deal with the issue of urban growth and spread, which of course will threaten the parks. They'll be seen as sort of open land for development. And, when things like that happen, you have to weigh sort of the intrinsic value of the park, which of course is hard to measure unless it does produce some sort of revenue. So I think the Portland parks, I believe they own golf courses, but I don't know if that's true of Oregon City parks. No. Okay.
The cemeteries.
Cemetery. Okay. Those are good money makers.
Grassy space.
Yeah. So you have to weigh those options. You have to weigh the intrinsic values, not the monetary as such, and then what's the opportunity loss if you don't permit that growth? All these things are going to be sort of big decisions in Oregon City's future.
Yeah.
But the way I see parks, it's sort of just a little piece of nature amongst the urban renewal. So I guess I wouldn't say staunch, but I like the idea of keeping parks. But then again, money's good too.
It was interesting to note, it was like 2011 was the latest figure, 2012, something like that, but of the top 20 cities in Oregon City is like number 2. It's just a skosh behind Beaverton for growth, annual growth. So, yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
It's on the horizon.
So, Michael, have you had a chance to go and visit more than just Wesley or the Waterboard Park? What other parks do you enjoy here?
Singer Hill, or Creek, Singer Creek. Singer Creek. It's the one with the disc golf. I also like that as well.
And what do you see as
sorry.
Go ahead. No.
And it's the names that escape me. And how else can you describe a park if not the name? It's green.
Any
area.
amenities?
Okay, there was one park that I really liked. It didn't have any woodland area. It was just very sparse grass, was really well kept, and it had a playground on it. And the amount of kids that would just rush in from it after they were getting off of school was so nice to see. That was a good park.
Yeah, the Rivercrest or Chapin?
Rivercrest. I believe that was it.
With all the kind of a Hawthorne type of park.
It is.
It has a nice water park with all
is
the
what it reminds
features.
me
The
of.
water features is kind of a neat. Yeah.
So a little bit of a follow-up question. So since you've been to a few of the parks, what do you see as the number one priority in terms of needs?
I don't think it would be fair outside of maintenance, which of course is needed across the board by any park because things grow and things break. I don't think I could adequately slap one need on every park because every park serves a different need for the community in it.
Do you know we have 37 parks in Oregon City?
Nope. That's
when
a
I
good
heard
many.
that, it about blew my mind. I think that's the accurate number.
Wow.
And for
Well,
a city
that
of this
includes
size,
the pool and the cemetery.
plus the
and
cemetery,
senior center.
plus the several other things that we're responsible for. Anyway, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One is, do you have time on your schedule to meet on a monthly basis and periodically on special occasions?
I was thinking that as I was fighting traffic here from my office. I do.
That's good.
Do foresee a change in my work schedule coming up, but I don't believe it will conflict, provided Thursdays are the usual meeting days.
Most of the time, we have very small absenteeism on this committee. People are very committed. And my other question is, what do you want us to know about you that we haven't asked? That's kind of your final moments with us. Anything you want us to really know about your interest or yourself?
Well, I try so hard to keep those hidden.
That's why I
I'm not
asked.
going to bring it up in court. I'm not going to bring it up here. No, outside of my dark sense of humor, no. I'm a team player. That's always, that's a good thing to know.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, and that's what I was going to end with was any other questions for us?
No, not that I can think of.
Great. Well, thank you for coming, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank
Right.
you too.
And he said he didn't want to let us know. Reminded me of Phil's interview. Phil. Because those people were also focused on telling about their career that it was very hard with a set of questions to learn what's that other little piece about
Right.
you.
That's right. Yeah, you get into reading these canned questions, and you don't really find out.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And if you would
Hi.
mind making sure that you're speaking into the mic during the conversation.
All right, thank you.
Welcome, Lisa. I'm Sean. I'm the chair of PRAC.
Thank you.
And we're kind of going to run down the line with a list of questions and just start off with Roger.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? So what brings you to the PRAC committee, and what strengths and abilities do you think you can bring here?
Well, it's very important to me to have outdoor space. On a personal level, I've made friendships here in Oregon City as a direct result of being at my local park. It's been a lifelong enjoyment of mine, the outdoors, and it's been important to me. It's been a framework of my life to be outdoors, and I think it's important for children to have that as well as the neighbors. I see the success of our neighborhood park and how people congregate, the kids have a place to go and play safely. I realize that some neighborhoods or some homes may not have the yard space, and I was fortunate growing up in an area that did, but I can see in a more city environment where the children don't, and I think that's really important for the kids to have a place to run around and exercise and enjoy themselves, as well as the adults. And what I can bring to the table is years of project management experience. I've had that career for quite some time now, going on 15, 20 years, if you counted all my experience. I have budget experience, scheduling experience, specifically in an engineering environment. And from what I read from the city's website, we do involve outside consultants. So I do have direct experience with that.
So do you have any previous experience serving on other boards or volunteerism?
No, homeowners association back in the Midwest where I previously lived. I've moved out here to be with family, homeowners association, but other than that, no.
And how long have you lived in Oregon City?
Almost going on 2 years.
And which neighborhood do you live in?
Park Place.
Park Place. And so in the Park Place Park, do you see any special concerns or things that are going on there?
Other than it being a little wet and muddy, no. It's been wonderful. It really has. I've met my neighbors. We've become fast friends. I see other people there with their dogs. I've met the park host. No, I think it's been going very well. I feel safe there.
Thank you.
So in the time you've been in the city, have you noticed any issues that are facing the city that are kind of pressing on you?
I can see budgetary issues as well as the Willamette Falls project. I can see changes. I've attended the neighborhood meetings, our Park Place neighborhood meetings. People are concerned about change. Yeah. See redevelopment of farmland into housing developments.
Yeah, that's happening a lot up near you.
Yeah. So that's something, I have experience at change management. So I can see where people are nervous, the neighbors. Yeah.
Very true. Well, thank you.
I think I can help with that.
So, Lisa, I'm Mike. So, as you use our parks, do you see what strengths do you see, what weaknesses, and what opportunities do we have to get better in our park system?
I think maybe more lighting, especially during the winter months. This morning I was there at 6 a.m., myself and another lady. I run. I have a dog. And we almost bumped into each other, even though we were both wearing the reflective gear. So some more lighting, I think, during the winter, darker hours that we have. Just right off the top of my head, I'd like that we have a park host in our particular park. I have gone to the other parks in the area in preparation for this meeting. I have not noticed or couldn't see from my vantage point if there were hosts, and I think that's a really good idea to have them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So hi, Blaine. You mentioned that you run in the parks. Are there other things, other modes of transportation or whatever that you like to enjoy in the parks?
Bicycle.
Right answer.
Yeah.
Sounds like inside baseball.
Yeah.
I do enjoy
You've been
cycling.
talking.
Out on the bike shop on Main Street. So
Oh, is it? That's
Yeah.
you for City Cycles.
yeah, first
Yeah,
cycles.
okay.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's great.
you got my vote now. So
Mongoose, that's the way to go.
thanks. Yeah. Good answer.
Lisa, I'm Chris, newest member on the committee. I've been here about a year now. So, and I live up by you. We moved here just about 2 years ago. So, what is having been to some of our parks? What do you feel is the biggest needs or priorities that are facing our parks? And you mentioned lighting and things
Yeah,
like that. And that's a
lighting.
safety concern, obviously.
Yeah. I'd like to see, I think it's important, and just from the chit chat with my close friends, it would be a trail, perhaps something like I was mentioning earlier, mud. Mud is kind of an issue, and the sogginess. Perhaps a chipped with wood chips, a trail of that nature. Perhaps a fenced area. I've had different individuals mention that to me. I've heard that several times in our neighborhood association, to have a fenced area. Some people are concerned that children may throw a ball, be playing baseball or softball, and a ball may go into a road. So that seems to be a concern as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Bob Burns.
Hi, Bob.
My last night on this committee after 2 terms. So welcome to the interview.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to have 2 questions for you. And one is, the first one is our committee meets most of the time once a month in the evening, usually 7 o'clock. But there are other occasions when we have to meet. Will you have any trouble meeting with this committee on a regular basis?
No, I've thought that through. I saw that on the website as well, the requirements. No, I work in Clackamas, just 4 miles from home. No, it would not be a concern.
Good. And the other question is related. Periodically, we have to give reports to the Oregon City Commission. 2 or 3 times a year, we have to give special reports back to the commission. Would you have any trouble leading a speaking engagement with the Oregon City Commission, representing the PRAC's position on different issues?
No, that would not be a problem.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, I think we're about to the end of our questions. Do you have any questions for us or anything you want to tell us that maybe we didn't cover?
Well, what I did not see on the website is plans. I saw one plan dated 2004, if I have that right from memory, and 2008. And I'm curious what the future plans are for the Parks and Recreation of Oregon City.
Are goals on there?
The goals, but I think you're referring to the master plans.
The
right?
master plan.
Yeah. And that came up with one of the other interviews. The 2008 is the most recent update to the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the 2 master plan.
And then there's
parks.
that'd be the main one. And then there's smaller parks that have been updated more recently within like the last 2 years, but they're smaller. Are those not on?
Those are on the website as well.
They are,
The master plan for the parks as a whole, 2008 was the most recent version.
Okay.
And we are getting close to probably needing to update that as well.
Yeah.
Another question is, Park Place wasn't listed on the directory. Is there a particular reason? Don't scare me and say
I will
something's
look into
happening.
That's surprising. So
No, it's on there, but it's got a different name or something. I had trouble finding it one time too.
Oh.
So we'll do some research. Get back to you on that. But
very
Yeah, I'm
interesting.
curious. I got nervous for a few minutes there, and I thought, oh, there must be some sort of
Yeah.
Conspiracy.
And you said you have a dog. And,
Yes.
And do you use the dog park at all, or
Yes.
the off leash area? I should say.
Love it.
Okay.
Love it. And I'd like to see it stay a success. We've been with our park host. The neighbors as a whole, we've been keeping it clean. There's been no issues, no concerns. It's been wonderful. And going back to children not always having a yard to play in, not every home has a yard for the dog to play in, and for various reasons. I see people there frequently, and it's been a big success.
That's good for us to hear, too, because it's a test. We didn't know. We picked that spot. We had some logic to it, but it was,
Is there a need for fencing the dog park there, or does it not need that? I mean, I took my dog there just a couple times, and he didn't seem to need it, but that's my dog.
I'm on Oregon City Chit Chat, and people have asked about that, and I haven't responded or anything like that. My particular circle of friends, it doesn't seem to be an issue, but it does seem to be, people are asking about it on Oregon City Chit Chat. Perhaps one park is fenced in, maybe training puppies, during that stage.
Well, and I think the long-term idea would be to fence something, but we didn't want to fence something that was temporary, was our original thinking. And the new park up by the high school has a fenced area in the plan. So that'll be the first formal constructed dog park.
And that will need to be fenced.
And it will. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, I think that'll make people happy.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your
Thanks,
time
Lisa.
and appreciate your input.
Well, thank you, folks. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right, let's take a 5-minute recess, and we'll reconvene a regular meeting at 7. Good evening. I'd like to call the December 1st, 2016 Park and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is introductions. Bob?
Bob Burns.
Chris Cook.
Blaine Meyer.
Mike Mitchell.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler Tice.
And I'm Sean Datchler. And the next thing is approval of the minutes.
And
Oh,
you do have a Phil Lewis. Thank you. You do have a revised copy, an updated copy of the minutes per Doug's request. So that is the only section that was updated in the original packet to what you're looking at in front of your computer screen.
Right, that was a correction that dealt with the creek.
Correct. It's the watershed conservation.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That passes. Any citizen comments not on the agenda? Nope. All right. Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Christina, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Christina Robertson Gardner. I'm a senior planner with Oregon City and staff support for the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. And I'm here tonight to engage in what we call community conversations. And we are, as staff on all 4 agencies, reaching out to stakeholders in the community at individual meetings to continue the conversation we started at the November 17th event we had at the Clackamas Community College campus. And what I'd like to do is to do a general presentation that kind of, if you were not at the meeting, and maybe raise your hand if you were able to attend the. Okay, so what I'll do is have kind of a little overview of what a lot of people got to see at the community event, and then what I'd like to do after I've done presenting is to work with Phil to have a little bit of a dialogue to understand better kind of questions, concerns, what's compelling, try to get a little bit of a download with PRAC. There's going to be different opportunities to stay involved. When I'm done, I'll also give you a little bit of information on how to take advantage of the community survey that's online right now at Rediscover the Falls. And so that we're not going to be going over that survey. That's something you can take when you go home tonight or the next couple days. As part of this process, I'll be taking notes and providing that to the design team, as well as Phil will be able to, as a member of our technical advisory committee and leadership staff, will be able to listen tonight and be able to kind of forward on some of any of your comments that he feels that really need to be brought up through kind of the Oregon City lens as well. So let's, okay.
You should, if you switch. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we're calling this the design alternatives phase as the Riverwalk design process. Let's use, okay.
Let's do this. There we go.
Hold on. It's not working.
Do the
Technical difficulties.
maybe these got switched. Nope.
We can switch places for a second too.
Oh yeah.
Let's just do that. Okay. So how did we get here? Just to remind everybody, when the Blue Heron Paper Mill went bankrupt in 2011, Oregon City worked with Clackamas County, the state, and Metro to form the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, which was a four government entity, to take formerly industrial property that was in federal bankruptcy to find a new owner and a new zone and a new story for that site. In the spring of 2014, the site was purchased by George Heigerken, a private property owner. In the fall of 2014, the site was rezoned to Willamette Falls Downtown District, which is a new mixed-use zone. Mr. Heigerken at that time also provided a public easement onto the site. The easement was always written as a preliminary easement, understanding through the design process, the Riverwalk final easement may be altered as we go through this design process. As what you see on the map here is our framework master plan. So right now the Riverwalk is legally aligned on a map. So our job this next year, what we're in, is to take a line on a map and to look at a preferred design for full build out. And then to determine how big and where phase one will be. And so we call that we're at the preferred concept plan right now, the big picture. And then as we move forward and crystallize on what the full build out will be, we'll be looking at what we call schematic design, which is asking the design team to focus into that phase one. So less detail in concept, more detail in phase one schematic. The other thing that we did in 2011 and 12 is adopt the 4 core values. Those have never gone away, and those are the lens we use for everything. And that's public access to the falls, a healthy habitat, historic and cultural interpretation, and economic redevelopment. Let's see. What we've done over the last 9 months, just like we did in the Vision Master Plan, is we've gone out to the community. How many of you were able to attend the open house in March at the Abernathy Center? We had 800 people at that event from 5 to 8 p.m. Really what I thought Snowhead did an amazing job, which is instead of just asking questions through the normal process, they kind of flipped it on its head, and they do some of these kind of creative design processes of really trying to get to the soul of what people want, so using pictures and describing words, rather than asking what people say, I want to be able to have a pathway. Well, what does that mean? And so you can have, they tried to get down to that deeper level. So this is a kind of that design exercise they did this spring. We also were at the First City Festival and wanted to learn more about how people wanted to use the Riverwalk. Since we started this process, we've identified to be able to form a tribal advisory board. There are 5 tribes that have identified ties to the falls. And up until now, we've had, and we still will have, direct government-to-government relations with the tribes. But as you know, when you're going through a design process, bringing the group together seemed like a very important process. So we have identified this tribal advisory board. We meet with them, and they're providing direction on cultural and historic interpretation, as well as natural resource issues that they see are vital to their both cultural ways, but as also any treaty rights they have. So we, as the government partners, are working with the state of Oregon through our IGA, and they're the direct government contact with the tribes. So what we heard last spring was how people wanted to use the site, and I'll through some of the key uses. We heard very strongly that people wanted to kind of do the things that were in these 9 key uses, which is falls viewing access, river access activities, collective gathering event space, habitat restoration and natural history interpretation, honoring Native American presence, past, present, future, acknowledge PG Dams operations and the legal rights they have, paths, walkways, and biking trails, historic reuse and cultural interpretation, and then really specifically kind of unprogrammed spaces. They wanted to make sure that that was woven into the concept of the key uses. What you see on the outside here are economic redevelopment. How does it tie in with the future economic redevelopment? And kind of the waterside diving and educational civic institutions are kind of that tie of public-private. That may not be exactly part of maybe a government installation, but there was definitely a reach out by the public that said we want to, at some place, want to see these activities integrated near or at the Riverwalk. And it may be partnerships we may have with private development or other cultural institutions. Joyce, did you have a question? Okay. Snøhetta also looked at when, and they're starting to put together this fascinating calendar, and the idea is it's always improving of how the river changes every season. So you'll kind of see at the top, it looks at key public uses. The thicker the bar, the more interest the public has. For example, we heard that the most interest was providing river access and activities in the summer season. River flow, you can kind of see where the documentation of how the flow changes, and we of all people in Oregon City know the dramatic change in the Willamette over the seasons. Target species. This also creates an opportunity to build on story of activities. We are working with Stillwater Science to determine what type of target species, such as Chinook salmon or Pacific lamprey. We're looking at resident species that inhabit the different habitat areas. And the Native American presence is shown, illustrated in a flat bar, because we are continuing to work with the Tribal Advisory Board to be able to bring in tribal activities that they see could be an opportunity throughout the seasons. And so this calendar is just amazing, full of lots of different information. But I think what Snøhetta does is using this visual thing like this calendar to really dive in when there's design decisions, or to really see where sometimes we think very different uses, or maybe look at things through a very different lens. And sometimes they may be they may have a lot of connection in different times, and that may play out in how the design is done and how we program it. We are also working on the hydraulic modeling of the shoreline. Let's see, get to my notes. Let's see. We are working with CH2M to model the river. This is a map of the depth and velocity during a 2-year storm event. The river is pink and purple, and the deeper water and the darker the arrow. So the faster the water is moving. So you both have a depth and velocity way of viewing this map. Having this base understanding will allow us to run different models with different design scenarios. For example, if we add or subtract structures on the site, this will help us learn and understand the impacts of the design during an event. So this pre-building this model is going to be helped to use to maybe test different design alternatives and how they may affect the site or affect the proposed design, especially in areas that we know might get inundated in high water, like normal high water events and seasonal high water events, and areas that may be inundated during a larger storm event. So this is a very long linear piece of property. So the design team broke it up into 4 areas. Oh, I'm sorry, this is existing habitat, excuse me. They also were looking at existing habitat. The site's existing conditions are unique and well positioned for ecological enhancement. The bottom graphic identifies the areas where buildings are built upon structural platforms. And these areas are also prime locations for revealing basalt. So the design team is also looking at when there are platforms on the site, is there ability to peel back some of those platforms, because those could also be key habitat areas, because they already were there existing historically. Here are 6 habitat types to be enhanced, preserved, and restored. So they identified these 6 habitat types that could be enhanced on the site: riparian forest, upland forest, oakland, woodland savanna, in-channel river, off-channel alcove, and riparian basalt.
It's hard to imagine an upland forest
out
of those.
There may be a place. I mean, there's definitely, I think in some places, especially on the development site, Maybe there are tree species that might help with native bird habitat and bird species that are in migration. So it's kind of thinking how not just the shoreline, but are there other habitat areas that can be help support when it may be off the traditional shoreline as we move into different parts of the site. This is, I think you've seen often a lot of these kind of public access arrow directions, but I think the key that I like about this is it's really looking at how we get to the site both in the water, through traditional ways of pedestrian access, bike access, and vehicular access, but really looking at how many ways can we look at connections on the site. So here are the design alternatives. As I mentioned, just as a way to better understand a long linear site, they broke it up into 4 areas. The first one we're calling the North Riverfront area. That's kind of right at the bend in 99E. And that shoreline that is in that first area is kind of a lot more typical. There's a lot of invasive species now, but it hasn't been as massively manipulated at the parts of the site. Area 2 is on the South Riverfront, and that you might hear the term yard or pipe chase. That's kind of the flatter area that's had some infill and fill over time and has that pipe chase, which is that structural concrete kind of bunker that also is used as a retaining wall. Area 3 is the PGE Dam, and Area 4 is that spur line that leads almost to Kenema. So here's an example of, so what we did is, this is really what the design team went to the public for. You'll notice that's not the whole Riverwalk, but these were the areas of consensus that they were able to reach both with our private property owner, PGE, talking to agencies, our 4 partners. So what the public saw this fall is where our our partners were able to get consensus and go out to the public to see what they thought was compelling. But there's a fair amount of area that we're still working with and have homework to do. So you see here, and these are what we're calling extra study areas. These are often kind of private development areas adjacent to the consensus areas. And there's still more work to do. There's areas that maybe not be in our 100% design easement, but may have opportunities to both improve the design of the Riverwalk, but also potentially support economic redevelopment. But it's some further negotiations with the property owner, as well as working with ODOT. You'll see area 2.2, which is kind of a long rectangle, which is up by 99E. For example, the pedestrian bridge we've identified to go from the site to the promenade. We're still working with ODOT and our partners in Public Works and the site owner to determine the best place where that may be. So we still have that piece that we're still working on some of the details. So this is what we asked the public for feedback at the November meeting. And I'll go through the different design alternatives in these sections. But our design team, led by Michelle Delkett, keeps reminding everybody that the Riverwalk is more than a walk. So people oftentimes they think of main streets and buildings, a very close linear sidewalk and the river, but that's not the Riverwalk. Sometimes the Riverwalk may have alternate paths that go up into Main Street. So you might have a primary route, but lots of secondary routes that kind of have these fingers that go into the private development. You also have to think of it 3-dimensionally. It's not just a flat line along the property. It may go down and hit points that you can get your toes in the water during times when that's appropriate. Temperature and velocity of the river. And there may be times when you can go up into a structure and get a better view. So think of the Riverwalk as a 3-dimensional open space is very important. What we see here is that first section that is right at the bend in 99E. So the 2 things that the design team wanted the public to look at is, one, the concept of explorer trails, so getting off of kind of the main PED bikeway of the Riverwalk and getting that kind of secondary experience. And then questions about water access. So this is where we are today. We're at that part in the first study area. We talk about the bulkhead. That is right there. That's actually where the oil barges used to come on and unload to the site. There's also a cylinder, and Mill O is the building back that kind of leads into what we'll see as the yard area next, and that's the annex to the Oregon City Woolen Mill. It's a 1917 building, and it's one of the 4 buildings that have been identified for retention as part of our master plan. So this section is what the design team put together for us to kind of get an idea, once again, that it's a real 3-dimensional understanding. At the top, you're kind of right up at where the parking lot for the administration office is. And as you move farther down, you'll kind of see the shoreline and then get into the river. What you see here also is the different colors talk about the 4 core. And the design team, through their analysis, wants to key off and see the different design alternatives. How are those 4 core values interplayed? So what they did at the design open house is they had kind of this placemat with different design alternatives and options in key areas. So one here we show a habitat option, and actually I'm off script, so hold on one second. So option 1 focuses on habitat by proposing to restore the natural edge of the river to increase habitat area, aquatic alcoves for fish and other species. So option 2 takes a more nuanced approach that combines access for small, non-motorized watercraft and a gathering area that is accessible from the water or land. So you can see a little circle that says gather. So that's a small area for like bringing kayaks in to the water in that area, for example. And option 3 would allow larger vessels to moor for the day and explore the Riverwalk, improving connections outside of Oregon City. So that shows a typical dock. I can tell you that our conversations with our state partners and permitting partners have identified, and I know you're not going to be shocked, but the velocity of the river in this area is making a larger dock hard. So we are looking at different design alternatives and keep pushing a little bit, but there is an existing dock there now. It's a local boat club, and they do have their permit for their small kind of residential dock. And so we're working with our state agents to see how that could be expanded, or based on the velocity of the river, could we get a permit to move forward on that?
Do they lease that dock or water space similar to the way Sportcraft leases from the city?
So this is me I'm not an attorney. From what I know, they have their own DSL permit for the dock. They have an informal agreement from the mill about to access through their property to get to their permitted dock. And the existing property owner has allowed that to continue. But the legality of that is outside of our purview.
Okay. I've always been curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The design team is also using precedent photos, again, to really distill people's thoughts about the materiality of the Riverwalk. And this is some of the things you will be able to do on the online survey, is really be able to key into materiality that you feel best exemplifies kind of the experience you think should be on the Riverwalk. And so you'll notice some, they're kind of pushing a little bit. They want to see, what, as good designers, they throw lots of different options, and they want to see what the public thinks of different ones. So not everyone necessarily, the designer, wants to do that, but they like these evocative precedent photos to try to see where they're getting consensus, or what the public finds compelling that maybe they didn't think it would be, or maybe there's a wide array of people's opinions. So these precedent photos, I think, are really great to try to distill out that concept. So here's some examples of what the materiality of some of these explorer trails may be. So the second area is the pipe chase and the public yard. And so this is an area bounded by Mill O and the Woolen Mill. So Mill O is that kind of vertical rectangle, and it kind of hits at a T to the Woolen Mill, which is on the horizontal. So in this scenario, they're really looking at a combination of opening up one of the tail races, and in this situation, it's a tail race that came out of the historic Oregon City Woolen Mill that today is in a box culvert as part of the fill project that was done in the mid-century. So can that be taken out and reopened, as well as leaving space for a gathering place? So this is an example looking, towards the site from the river. And I'm going to get back on my. Let's see. Okay. So the pipe chase is about 24 feet by 290 feet, and it's about 24 feet tall. Though the reuse of the pipe chase can provide an easy connection to the southern portion of the site, but removal of the structure will require access to the falls through the interior of the site away from the river or through the construction of a new access route. Habitat restoration removal or partial removal of the pipe chase will better provide habitat restoration enhancement opportunities for wildlife habitat and protect sensitive alcove habitat. And views along its length, the pipe chase can provide views to the falls to the south, to the river to the west, and views to the interior of the site to the east. If the lower level is utilized, you can get safe proximity to the river. So this shows in this scenario the river, just the top of the river walk of the pipe chase being kept. Here's one that they're calling this is option one, the porch option. So the top is kept, but the kind of below area is opened up for viewing. And in this situation, they kind of have seating, but providing kind of a covered space and a way to interact with the river without being in the river. This shows what we showed in the original one of moving more to our habitat restoration, but keeping the top. And this shows a hybrid approach. And where are we? Oh, isolation is when you really are you're no longer keeping that pedestrian connection all along the shoreline, but you're really providing stronger habitat protection, maybe with a viewing platform, but you're bringing people back into the site to get them out to the falls. And this shows kind of really a portal option, which is taking it all out and really just having a viewing platform right at Millow. And lots of habitat. So people have also said really strongly, especially Oregon City people, that they want a gathering space. They want a civic gathering space at the Riverwalk. And so as part of this, continue to tease out, well, what does that mean? Because civic gathering space can be many, many things. Is this a green lawn? Is this a Pioneer Courthouse Square feeling? Is this, what events do you want to do there? Are we programming farmers market or festival events? Is there a area for outdoor performance? Is this a cultural link to some type of cultural interpretation? All those questions are still out there. So once again, some of these precedent photos are helping to understand what really excites people out of these photos. And the last piece is kind of the Falls Overlook PGE area, and we'll talk about the clarifier and the Falls Overlook. So the clarifier, if you've been there, is a 2 million gallon clarifier that took processed water and stormwater from the mill and every day sent it out through the pipes over to Westland where they had their discharge area. The clarifier was cleaned out, and it's now this very big concrete structure that is in the Riverwalk easement area and is on the property and is not part of the PGE dam, though it is definitely integral to PGE dam considerations. So whatever is chosen, we have to work with PGE on how they do their spills on this part of the dam. So not everything is on the table, but there's some things on the table as opportunities. So here we are on the PGE dam looking south of the clarifier and that rock outcropping. And in the summertime, there's very little spill that comes over the dam, but in the wintertime, when all the dam gates are open, this is just inundated with water. And sometimes when you're on the dam, you kind of hear the water behind you with the spills, and you hear the falls in front of you, and it's just an extraordinary kind of 360 sound experience. So here's some examples. This shows proposal, and I'm going to go through them. One is what happens if the clarifier is removed totally and it's really dedicated to habitat restoration. So there really would be no access to the Falls Overlook except for the existing PGE walkway. One option is a kind of a theater in the round, though this one, I think there's still questions if this could be done from a potential PGE safety issue, and I think this may have been had to take it out. So this may not have actually been shown at the public. One idea is because, as you know, in the summertime when people all want to be on the site, the falls are not necessarily at their most spectacular, but we all still want activities to happen out on the PG Dam to keep it lively and have this very long linear space still filled with human activity. And so the design team really had a question of what if something is done for seasonal activities on the clarifier that had some spectacle to it, but it was not permanent and so just using a balloon as an example. Apparently in Paris they have this balloon that happens in the summertime and people can come up and get these views of Paris and come back down again. The balloon goes away. Was kind of their thought in a sense of, is there an activity that can be done on the clarifier that's really activates summer usage? So that's kind of the thought, is it may get more covered over as more of a plaza area that can be repurposed for summer activities. Another opportunity is this turned into a stormwater planter or some type of habitat planter, and maybe the walkway is just on the perimeter. So you might walk around the clarifier to get access to a secondary bridge that gets you to the Hawley Power Station foundation and the overlook that we all like to get to. Another opportunity is kind of a landform. You know, we're all looking at different views. So in this habitat opportunity, can we fill it up with actually more fill to provide a little more height and a little more of a landform? And so you get different views, but you're still activating it for habitat, but it's also could be potentially activated with human activity as well. This is looking at precedent photos for over. So right now we're definitely hearing from the community that the kind of, some people call it the dance floor, that's a PG term, but the foundation of the Hawley Powerhouse is a very spectacular place and very important place in the Riverwalk design. But what does that mean, and how should we be addressing it? Though there is a definite goal to have covered areas for weather, but is this necessarily, other than covered areas, what do you want to experience when you're out there? And so they have some precedent photos to see what of these images are compelling to people. Where we are today, we started the concept planning process in March of this year. And really the design team, like all good designers, they've just been circling back. They're doing work circling back to their stakeholders and continuing this process. As they move forward through these community conversations and this public event and continue working with their stakeholders, they're going to be coming up with a preferred design in late winter, early spring, and then moving forward to schematic design phase 1. We hope to go through the land use process this summer, and the goal is to really break ground with phase 1 development sometime in 2017.
So what would be the estimated public access people can walk on it? 2020?
Good question. I think the larger question is, after we worked on the preferred design, we have about $19.5 million raised. We asked the design team to look at a $25 million phase 1 schematic design because we thought that was a reasonable reach goal. And now that's a hard and soft cost, $25 million with contingencies. So it's not just $25 million, all hard costs. We also are looking at providing preferred design that can help raise money for the rest too. We have Rediscover the Falls, our newly formed friends group, that are reaching out to raise money, and they do have some potential large donors that they are actively working on. We think that this first phase, we don't quite know how big and where it is. And I think once we look at it, we all get a handle on what the preferred design is, and is where and how big should this be. So A, it catalyzes economic development. B, it excites our community and wants us to raise the rest of the money to finish it. So, I mean, there's obviously more criteria, too, but those are some of those really big questions, because you could build a $25 million Riverwalk and just get from the bend in 99E to the Pipe Chase, and maybe do a little civic place, but maybe that's doable and that's what the public wants and might catalyze economic development, but will it help us? And it might help us raise money for the future because we aren't all the way out to the dance floor. Maybe we want to get spend our money to get people closer to the falls because it's going to be more exciting than we can infill on the way back. I mean, there's lots of different scenarios that try to understand what's the best use of our money today for phase one. And we're still going through the public and asking our partners and figuring that out, what makes sense. But the question of when it will be finished, when we get to construction, I think that's 2020, 2019. Mm-hmm. I think our goal is maybe there's smaller projects we can take on earlier. We want to get people out as soon as we can. And we know that former Mayor Neely has the best phrase, and I always like to use it, is instead of if we build it, they will come, is if they come, we can build it. So getting people out on the site sooner will always help. I always believe will help us build more.
I did have one other question. It's a little off topic, but the connection between the Bend in 99E and John Storm Park, is there any talk of that, or just in? Sure.
Well, if you recall, we have a McLaughlin Boulevard enhancement plan, and we've done 2 of the 3 phases. So the last phase left is what we call Tunnel to 10th, and that's really from the railroad tunnel all the way to 10th Street. And half of that is the viaduct, the ODOT viaduct. And so we are, as a city, are moving forward to continue grants to build that, especially a redesigned intersection at Main and 99E that will really provide a welcoming environment for people to cross the street as part of that as well. 99E is actually not that wide, but right now it's not, beautifully designed, and there's nowhere to go once you cross. So I think that's as well as trying to work with ODOT and the viaduct to provide more robust pedestrian connections between kind of this amazing Riverwalk, our Willamette Promenade that we built 7-8 years ago, and John Storm Park. So we do have a hole in our great pedestrian Riverwalk, which really, in a sense, starts at Clackamas Park and ends at Willamette Falls. Mm-hmm. And it's just a process of continuing working with our partners and determining how we take down that last bit. Yeah. So what we're going to kind of start a conversation with this, and what I'd like to do is we can go back to the different areas and kind of 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, have a conversation about the 3 areas. And I'm going to switch with Phil and start typing. But I just want to remind everybody, we have the Riverwalk survey for the whole public is on our website. Right when you go to Rediscover the Falls, front page, click on it. It'll be open for the next 2 months, but our first closure is December 7th. The design team is going to take those first bunches of information and really use that towards their next step of refining the design alternatives. We're going to have another run kind of in January, early February to kind of compare and see if we're getting different information from the public. So if you want to get in this first run, definitely get your individual surveys to the design team through that survey before December 7th. And once again, I'll be taking notes and providing it to the design team as well as any direction that you get from Phil. So I'm going to switch, and if we want to go back to...
Or task.
Yeah.
So, as you'll remember, this is near that bulkhead, that first area on the project. This is the representation of the current site and what it might look like as a blank canvas, including some of those access trails. And looking at, so task 1, again, this is the... we're looking at how you want to experience the site. And so we're just looking for a conversation as to what you envision there, what you might be doing, what it might feel like, whether or not there's going to be restoration in the habitat or access to the water directly, or just observing the water in that area. So again, the first one is habitat restoration. Next one is option 2, considered steps. So again, this is launch, which would be non-motorized launching area, as well as a gathering place, less emphasis on the natural habitat restoration. Option 3, again, you're looking at a dock, which would be access for motorized or larger water access, as well as it does reflect some habitat restoration as well. So in that first grouping, again, with the 3 options, habitat, steps with gathering place, and non-motorized launching, and the access with the dock and connecting motorized boats, anything that sticks out, and again, this is a conversation, doesn't necessarily even need to be specifically what you're viewing, but it could be, aspects of different pieces that you really think are important in this area, or even might be used in other areas as well, which is, if for example, non or motorized access along the Riverwalk is really, really important to you.
Roger?
Well, I see an issue here if you're talking about having a public space there to meet, and this is the very beginning, that could really tie up that whole area with the traffic, and versus having a public space to gather further in. I like that there's all the the boat ramp and those things going in right there, because that's part of the stage. It's kind of a staging area, right? So, but as far as the gathering space, that kind of makes me nervous as far as traffic on 99 there and trying to get access in there, and it's just that's what I have.
Well, and at that point, what are you, Christine, about 200 yards from the curve? You're quite a ways to that point. I mean, you're almost halfway in the site.
Well, what would be nice on here then would be a map up the top and a pointer to exactly where you're talking about. This look like
there.
So here's
Yeah,
a great
there we go.
example. So do you see where number 2 is?
Yes.
That is about
All
that
right.
opportunity of do you provide kind of access? When it says gather, it's really access steps down, but in a more of a
see.
larger kind of gathering area that could accommodate many people, like bringing kayaks in and up. But I think that was definitely one of those questions of where are people parking? How are they carrying their kayaks? I mean,
Well,
like,
I
what's the
saw-
logistics of
Yeah.
getting that? But that is probably one of the best places to get access to the site from the water in a non-motorized way.
Okay, then.
So
yeah.
that's kind of that. If we know that, how would the design play with that?
I'm thinking more of access from the water, in that people who have launched down at Clackamas Park have paddled upriver to this, and now we want to stop and have lunch, and so get our kayak out of the water and walk up and have some lunch, and then come back and float back down to Clackamas Park. So somewhere, along this whole thing needs to be a place where people who are already on the water can get out of the water. That's one of the things I see.
My opinion is option 2 gives you the most usability of the area. It's versatile. You could use it for kayaks or just sitting by the river. But it also affords you the opportunity to restore some of the habitat as well. Maybe not as much as not having anything there or the boat docks, but having boat docks there to me just seems like it kind of, for lack of a better term, pollutes the view, and it's larger activity.
The option
and,
3 docks, yes.
Yeah. To me, that takes away from the idea of people going down to the river and actually seeing the natural habitat and using that space.
So if you saw a design that did not have a motorized boat dock, what would your reaction be if it was a preferred design that did not have a motorized boat dock?
That would be my preference. And full disclosure, I'm not a motorized boater.
Yeah.
I'm a non-motorized boater, so that's probably part of it. But
Sean would
I was going to chime in here.
Mary S. Young, Meldrum Bar, Clackamas, Sportcraft, John Storm. We have, in that stretch of river, we have taken care of motorized boaters, to me, in a big way. And the problem that with the facilities that motorized boats need, they make a natural barrier and a point of conflict between motorized boaters and non-motorized boaters. As a kayaker, I have to play it pretty carefully when my wife and I choose to get on the Willamette in that area of the river because of all the motorized boat traffic and the conflict that can happen. So, to me, and again, that's my bias, but it feels like we've taken care of that, and unfortunately, they don't live real well together, right side by side. So I think there's more to be lost than gained by having a motorized boat dock.
What if it was for more commercial tourist boats, or to get? I mean, and once again, I'm not speaking for hydraulics or if this can happen, but that question for economic development of if the Portland Spirits of the world, or whatever the future is, if they need to go to John Storm Park and shuttle, I mean, is it getting people to the site or getting people from there? Is that important for that kind of economic vitality?
Like a transit dock.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
Well, it is. That is important.
There is a spot.
Let me dodge your question.
Yeah.
And speak from the motor boater, and I have kayaks too, and I don't like a dock there. We've got John Storm, and you look at that dock, and you may have a hog line with 30 boats across the river, and the dock's empty. So the actual utilized space on the dock, we've got a 300-foot dock, which is 600 feet of tie-up space, and we're not using 600 feet of space that we already paid for. And you've got a lot of things that need to go into that budget, and that's a budget buster item. That's how I would look at that. So, going back to his point, the passive recreation side, you're going into a gathering space. In fact, I agreed. I was wondering how I would ever launch my kayak there, but the better way to do it is you put in it Willamette Park, Clackamat Park, and you come up and you go to lunch. That's a great point, and so that's option 2 stands out to me for that reason.
But option 2 there's all of that gathering space that. That's
So what I'm visioning there is, for example, in Hood River, there's a beach park, and I'm envisioning something like that where people can at least just walk down and touch the water. And that's all you need for a kayak. Whether it's my daughter putting her toes in or me, my kayak, that's kind of irrelevant. It's can the public touch the water?
I think that's idea of how can the public do that, and how do we make sure it's not this tiny little skinny trail?
Right.
So how do you make it kind of a big enough area that you can have maybe 15 people gathering and touching the water, and then a couple kayaks coming in and out at any one time and not getting on each other's toes.
So I'm just curious, is the vision for option 3 with the dock, is that kind of like you're seeing this Portland Spirit dock there, and that's so cool, and people coming off in the droves, to come to the site?
Could be. I think the key we're still working with the Marine Board and all of our state agencies is that even an option? What would it look like? How big would it be? Would it be a long-term add-on? That maybe when we keep a place for it, but when it only happens if other money comes from other projects or not a primary priority, but we don't exclude it from happening. So those are some of those long-term
discussions. And that would be
discussions.
my perspective. I would never say no, or build something that would prohibit that later. But I also think those are private businesses that also need to support and stand up. And right now you've got several businesses, and one that's gone out of business that we counted on here already. So when John Storm was built, we had a boat that showed up there. So we built it, and now they're gone.
There's also that, and I guess larger boats used to dock there, the stern wheelers, just across from the courthouse. If it was going to be fully commercialized, you probably need an elevator.
Yeah. Is it at the 8th Street dock? Or,
Yeah.
yeah. And just, I mean, the 8th Street dock's not dead either. I mean, the design that happened that necessitated the movement to John Storm Park required pilings. And so could there be a scenario that had a cable stay that was attached to the rocks? Those are all questions, and like a lot of things would not probably part of any phase 1 schematic design, but it goes back to what Sean was saying is it important that we don't ever preclude it, or is it just not a priority, or is there other things that become a priority over it, and we're okay with that direction because whatever priority is important to this design.
Is there a question there?
Okay.
I don't think so.
So moving on, again, looking at materiality of the Explorer Trail system, and we have a couple options here, what it looks like. And again, these are just to give ideas, not necessarily what it definitely should look like, but what do you want to feel when you're down there? What types of materials do you want to be walking on? What are some of the considerations that, as you're using the space, will be important for you, or that you feel would be, preclude inclusion in certain areas based on the conditions, or what you feel you might want to experience in those Explorer Trail systems?
Well, if I can jump out on this one, I really like anything here that's more of a bridge or a cantilevered walkway. Something that gets me out into it. So even in the earlier drawings where there were large walkways that kind of arched out over the river, those all kind of stand out. But I also hadn't thought about the idea of being multi-dimensional like that one drawing showed. So that's kind of something I wasn't thinking. I was thinking staying along that top of the pipe, and the idea of going down and up and moving through, I hadn't thought of that at all. But it's important.
For me, knowing that some of the existing structures are going to stay, some of the concrete, things like that, there has to be kind of a transition or a balance between the natural habitat and what's there now. Instead of like on the previous slides we were looking at for like the boat, the gathering spot and all that, you have this white concrete walkway that looks very sterile. Oh, I know that's just a concept.
Yeah, I mean the idea is that the materiality will be played over, and this is think of it as a blank canvas.
Right, and that's something I wouldn't want to see is that kind of contrast, is some kind of tie-in between the two, or some kind of transition between the two of the existing structures and what's there, and have it incorporated into the natural habitat.
Where's this going? I see all the different steps. I wonder about the accessibility for handicapped folks. And we don't want to have something that automatically disallows handicapped people from having access. So,
well, we would be bound by ADA, right? For access.
Some of these pictures sure don't show that.
I'm going to go for the great answer of it depends. I think things like that structured walkway, absolutely, but maybe other smaller kind of seasonal, or maybe the kayak. There may be smaller trails that get exempt, but all the larger access areas and anything that's structured would all be ADA.
I like the idea of, I like habitat, but having it all habitat and not a lot of access wouldn't be, I can go a lot of places if I want to get near a river and hang out, without any human obstructions. So I think to use that site to have some habitat there, but maximum amount of accessibility. So I'm intrigued by the double decker with the that gives you a lot of different opportunities to gather or sit and listen to the river, and so I like as much running water as possible. So exposed raceways and all that would be wonderful.
I like Blaine's point though that you got a lot of natural areas, so we're not doing it a disservice by not making it all natural again.
Right.
Right. Any other feedback on the Explorer Trails and materiality with that? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. So the next one we're looking at, again, is the pipe chase and public yard areas. So currently, and This is not what it currently looks like, but they give you a couple different options. Again, option one is porch, so that current current pipe chase, it's about a football field long, so it's almost 300 feet long. And what they're showing is to allow access on that porch area for viewing, including habitat. Next one, again, top deck, so removing the whole lower section, creating a larger area for habitat and more access for light and viability for the habitat restoration. And then the next option, again, is looking at a layered effect, so having some of the upper deck and then actually bringing it down to the lower level of where currently the bottom section of that pipe chase is.
Let me ask a clarifying question on option, the first one of those three. The second. Would that natural area, would the intent there be that that's essentially fenced off or restricted from human interaction? Okay.
But it is covered, so unlike the ones in the other one, like the porous kind of has that cutout, so
right.
You can get more sun and rain in that porous option. The other one is kind of, you get that contiguous upper area, and then you're really just getting the habitat access from the water, in a sense.
Right.
I mean, it's habitat.
I see it as a natural area, though, so people can't walk through.
Correct.
There would be no river access.
Yeah. Correct.
It'd be very difficult, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or not allowed, was
yeah.
the point that I was
yeah.
making.
Yeah.
And then the next one is the isolation. So again, looking at fragmented section of the upper pipe chase, disconnecting that, and then maybe making a fragmented kind of layered effect there, including the habitat. And then I think it shows maybe some explorer trails going.
Yeah, this
through.
one is interesting. I didn't say it, but if you see right above where it says fragment, you're basically taking the river walk. You'll kind of see the white area, and you're kind of bringing it through the site. And maybe you go back to the second part, and it's more of a gathering viewing platform. So this option basically puts habitat, completely exposed habitat, in a sense, cut between the two sections. You got to get back into the yard area for the river walk. It's not that contiguous along the river approach.
And I will say some of the questions that were brought up in the work sessions were we're showing a kind of a cut through, but on some of the other versions that might include, so in the layered effect, and again, Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would include carrying all the way over to the current boiler building on the corner of that property. So just because it is cut off there, again, that would be a continuation along the riverfront, allowing access all the way across.
But you have that openings.
But you have openings throughout to view habitat and allow for sunlight down in those areas.
It's kind of nice about that. There is a covered area, so if it was pouring down rain, you could have that.
Or shade in the summer for picnic, or
you could enjoy it in the winter, though.
With the elevate, can you go back a slide? Yeah. With the elevation of that lower, where the word layers is, if you were up in the public space, are you going to see the river, or are you just going to see that?
Well, I think the idea is you will, by taking it down, you will have a view of the river.
Okay. Like cutting here.
Today, it's all kind of flat today, and you're actually on. See where that person is walking on top of the pipe chase next to Mill O? There's a little tiny person. Today, that is the level of the whole pipe chase, and that, in a sense, it's also a retaining wall for the fill. So a lot of this is how you grade and take out the fill and open up that tail race and expose that rock and understand where those views are. And that's still a little bit of a working process with the design team of really trying to key in those different views and how much you drop it down. But if you drop it down too much, and you don't take some away, you will lose your view. So there's a little bit of how to keep that.
And is that well above a normal floodplain at that lower level?
No, it'll be inundated in high water. So that's that idea is in these secondary areas during a high water event, it could very well be inundated. So that area would not be a primary access area; it would be a secondary access
And so,
area.
like in the bleacher-looking area, would there be like a walkway from that building down into that area? That, in other words, that upper deck. So if you're over in the public space along the building, would you be walking through like a doorway down into that or down into that bleacher-looking?
And again,
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think the design team had used this as kind of a jumping off point.
Yeah.
So if you see things that you think it would be really important to have some connectivity between that upper area and the lower area, and or connecting from the upper deck over to the lawn or gathering space area. Those are pieces that we can discuss and that you can add input.
Well, so then I would say that this to pull it back a layer. I like the idea of continuity across there, and so however you achieve that would be important, and I would think that year-round continuity would be important.
Say that. I'm sorry.
Year-round.
Year-round.
So in other words, I guess that kind of makes the top layer the requirement, and the bottom layer.
So that would be looking back at
Almost an inverse of the. I
The
guess what
top
I'm saying is
top deck
that,
version.
but almost an inverse
That's
of
the
the
top.
other.
That's the top.
Right. I'm saying, so what if you kept that as your continuity all the way across, but you had several of the smaller pieces with the top layer having the holes in it?
Mm-hmm.
And you take that and you invert it,
Okay.
because then it's year-round.
So the comment would be making it above the ordinary high water mark, possibly to allow for access year-round.
Yeah.
But then, to Mike's point, then you lose your visibility from the courtyard out to the river, though, right?
Not necessarily if you're making that bleacher-looking aspect only periodic. I mean, because then you're looking where the layer is. Say the midsection is just the upper deck, and if you're at the courtyard, you're still looking under it. You don't have a wall blocking you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to take out that sidewall.
Right.
So this is great. I think I want to reiterate when we pay designers, they're doing these conceptual, and then we're really, in a sense, this next contract is okay. Now you're going to spend the money to resolve what we're hearing, and so distilling out what I'm hearing now, which is things like the continuity of access and high water in the winter along the river is important, but just as much as habitat and those peek throughs. But I think they would probably say is if you were balancing that public access versus the habitat, how far in would you be willing to bring the Riverwalk in this yard area in the wintertime where there may be higher water, or to support habitat? And that habitat access balance is a lot of what the design team is looking at throughout the whole segment. And many areas may have that flip where habitat becomes the primary driver in this area and access becomes more of a primary driver in this area.
It seems too that in this, the one you have up now, during the really high flood, I guess, if you will, that I don't know if I'd want that top layer to go out any further. I mean, you kind of want to be back a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's a flood event, the Riverwalk's close to the public. This is more of those kind of
even high water. Though.
Yeah, these winter high water events that we see,
right?
Every year.
Yes.
That's
But
kind
I
of
don't
the
know if I
larger
want this all the way
question.
out here. Yeah.
Thank you. I hadn't noticed that.
There's pieces I like about each one of these, and for me, like in the wintertime, I don't necessarily care if it's covered or not. But one of the draws for me to that area is, especially in the wintertime, is the power of the river, and just watching that, and it's just it's awesome to watch, and just being able to get as close as I can to it, to see that. I know my daughter would love that.
That's exactly
It's
what
just-
I was trying to
Yeah,
say.
it's awe-inspiring.
What do people, and Snowhetta probably doesn't get this, we have to tell them, but look at every parking lot around here when it's at flood stage, and what do? We all walk down there.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But just-
hopefully
I
we
mean-
don't get a 96, but,
Today, I mean, I wish I could get as close as I could to those falls, just in the wintertime, just watching that power. It's pretty neat.
And you do have to think about the continuity of the space, because there will be access at the viewpoint or the dance floor area as well, if you're really wanting to get up close and personal with the spray and the sound and all of that. But it might not, depending on time of year and PG maintenance and what those connectivity pieces look like. So you have to think about all those different factors that come into play, and if that access is really important to you in this area, or to maintain again that continuity along that entire pipe chase.
There is a really good view of the falls from the pipe chase.
That's my point.
It's not the falls, but it's a very beautiful view.
Well, that's my point for the continuity across that top. I don't think you want to break that spot up, because that's your big viewpoint, especially for somebody, even some people like my mom is afraid of heights. And the dance floor is probably, that even the walk out there would scare her. This edge she'd probably get closer to because it doesn't seem as scary.
Don't you have one more thing?
Sure.
Not this one.
The fragment. Or just habitat.
It's not. There's one more. That one. Thank you.
The top deck.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about, Sean, but having a cutout in the top deck.
Yeah.
But then also keeping the stadium seating
Yes.
on the one end.
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
I like that.
Great.
Good job. Thank you.
I still like the idea of, if you're down there for an event, being able to just relax, listen to some music or whatever is going on, and be able to see the falls from that point too.
That lower area seems like it would be a quiet area that you could have music in almost, because you'd be blocked from the road noises. And any other comments?
So
You've shown this to a lot of people. Is there any leaning on those various options? Is there kind of a...
Well, actually, I wasn't a facilitator at the public event, so I know Phil was.
Yeah.
I spoke about parking to everybody, but
How boring.
we did actually have a debrief with some of the facilitators the day after, and it was really great to hear kind of the different responses. They took photos of everybody's whiteboard, and then the facilitators did their own debrief kind of survey. And then once again, you're actually our first community conversation past event, so
Most important.
I'll have a lot more data in January after we have probably maybe 25 of these scheduled, 20 of these. Wow. So reaching out to all of our stakeholder organizations, and so we'll probably hear a lot of varied comments, but I think we're all looking for those threads, to be able to give our stakeholders, our partners, and the design team, because we're in a place where we're hearing all of these comments, but what are the things that are resonating with people, either as this is absolutely compelling, or we have everybody, we're not getting a consensus of opinions.
Yeah, how do you distill it?
And so how do you distill it and find those threads? And so this is really some of the points of these community conversations.
Great.
This is fun.
And so then the next section again, we're looking at task 2 from this overview. Right. So task 2 again is the public meeting area, and how it's shown here again does not necessarily reflect what it will be or should be. So hopefully don't let that sway what you think could be in that space.
Real quickly, I didn't add this in, but a couple months ago, the design team actually took this kind of yard area, and then they put different open spaces and plazas around the world that we all recognize, and they scaled them to meet the plaza area, and they dropped them in so you could see what an Italian piazza looked like. What did Times Square? What does that fit? And so with this kind of triangle approach of kind of that half habitat, half open space, if you took Pioneer Square, which is about 200 by 200, and you kind of cut it in half and then kind of added those, that would be about what the kind of non-habitat triangle space is. So kind of think of it as a more linear version and space-wise. Not that it would be brick, but that just kind of gives you a sense of size and dimension.
Is that the Woolen Mills Foundation area?
Do you see the big white box in the back?
Yeah.
So that, and you can see the Woolen Mill Foundation walls. And so this is some of this interesting conversation with the property owner about our easement. And this negotiation discussion is, we have an easement on top of the site, then we also have a design easement area that's about 120 from high water line. And so having that negotiation and conversation what the final easement is. So the framework master plan does allow the Woolen Mill to have new development on it, though the Woolen Mill walls are kept. The top of the flood overlay zone is about the top of the Woolen Mill, give or take a foot or two. So anything built in that Woolen Mill stretch would have to, the first habitable floor would have to start right above that wall. So that long, but I think what actually, do you want to go back real quickly to that one? So if you see, this is kind of the scenario that Snehata was saying is, if you see the square that's up at the top right-hand corner of this, right?
The gray square?
Oh, sorry, top left-hand corner. I can't do mine. Okay, so this is actually kind of that first 40 feet of the Woolen Mill. So the idea would be, can you walk down Main Street and then you go into this kind of part of the Woolen Mill that then brings you into the open space. And then this area is still up to be determined if this is more public open space or private economic redevelopment. But I think the design team really felt strongly that you get connection into the yard both through Main Street, but also through the Riverwalk.
Okay.
So this is where they showed a grayed out area is a concept size discussion, not necessarily what this treatment is.
That's kind of your other potential grand entrance.
Yes, correct.
So again, we're looking at materiality of that space. Is it do you get a feel for like a Pioneer Courthouse Square? Is it more of a grassy lawn area? What kind of feelings do you have when you're in that space? Should it be, looking at some of the photos, they have it laid out, kind of a mixture of, natural elements as well as, concrete. And so what do you feel when you're there? What kind of activities do you want to do when you're in that space?
Well, a couple of things that came up in the little group that I was in. We were hoping for something that was a pervious surface, but that would be able to be used year-round, which is a good challenge. Something like that top left-hand corner in photo here. The other thing, can you go back to that one that had back? Sorry. Oh, yeah, right there. That'll do it. So, well, no, go back. Sorry, keep going back. The one there. What we talked about, and what I think in our little group anyway, got all of us kind of the most excited was imagine that Mill O building and basically blow out everything on the first floor, on the ground floor. So it's just a big open space, and it could be food carts, it could be Saturday market, it could be a farmer's market,
Pike
Street Market, and it's kind of an indoor-outdoor space that flows into the outdoor space.
That's a good idea.
And I think it also kind of helps you on the flood side of things too, because that lower floor is in the floodplain.
That is correct.
And then with some sort of mix of office or even residential on the upper floors.
When I first saw that picture, I was thinking more of.
Be kind of neat.
I was thinking a little more. It's an industrial site. I was thinking you got a lot of natural area, keeping it concrete. So something like Salmon Street fountain area. We sit down there waiting for the Portland Spirit before, and so this would be a good place to sit and wait for your hour and 15-minute wait to a restaurant when you have reservations.
Get your little buzzer in your pocket.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm taking that to the next layer. But
so the one thing that deters me from going to Pioneer Courthouse Square is, especially in the summertime, is you get on those bricks and it's like an oven. It's like that's the last place I want to be in the summertime. So something that, like Mike's point, something that's maybe a balance between grass and concrete, something that's sustainable and not overly high maintenance would be nice. Something that you can actually sit on and not, be uncomfortable.
Put a fountain in there like Salmon Street where the kids can play. Yeah. They need another spray park.
The big challenge will be parking, of course. The more activity, it's going to be a huge parking challenge.
Christina's already said she's all over that.
I'm happy to talk about parking.
That's okay.
I mean, you're going to have that challenge regardless. I mean, downtown now is kind of
But
up
the
and
more
coming.
activity
and
we
more
have,
people
the
are
more,
going.
the more things we want, gathering places, food carts, that's all transportation related, so.
So I think
Big
your
challenge.
thought process should be, we really want this to be an active, vibrant public asset. Thank you. And that we will provide enough parking or parking options or transportation options to accommodate the people that are going to be using the space.
So that brings up a good point, though. I mean, is there some kind of discussion or vision about long-term like transit plans for the downtown area?
Yeah, I'll do my 3 minute.
Trolleys,
parking
something. But I know.
Oh, it's okay. No, it's,
Let's make it a 1 minute.
1 minute.
We're pushing the clock.
So there's lots of different tools in the toolbox for access management and multimodal plans, and we'll be looking at all the tools, how we want to strategize them, what do we want to do for phase 1, and how can we work with the property owner and future developers to kind of fully implement our strategy.
Have we gone past the Riverwalk discussion into the full-blown development site here?
No, I think the parking strategy is really just Riverwalk right now, and it's what we can be looking at for as we phase the different phases of the Riverwalk, what we can be bringing to the table for our kind of multimodal options, transit, bike, ped, working with downtown, working with the when and how we're going to get the ped bridge built to the McLaughlin Promenade, things like that.
I didn't mean to cause tangents.
It's okay. Parking, everyone likes to talk about parking.
I did have a question about our role as the Parks and Rec Committee in Riverwalk specifically, but the Blue Heron site, the Willamette Falls Legacy in general.
I'm going to look at you, Phil.
Yeah.
I mean, the parks are going
So-
to be maintained not by us, but by the city, are they?
We're not exactly sure yet.
Okay.
So the 4 partner groups have not decided who will have ownership or what type of sharing of ownership might happen on the location. So as of right now, it is to be determined.
All right.
An operation and maintenance plan is a big deliverable that's going to happen at the preferred design, and that's going to help spur that larger question of how the easement and ownership and long-term operation and maintenance will be shared by the partners.
Well, I think that's something that your takeaway from this meeting tonight would be that that's something we're deeply concerned about. Is we can't make the maintenance now, and this would be a huge money sink that could be detrimental to the rest of the community parks and playgrounds and ball fields.
Unless we could get some kind of federal or state funding to help, maybe that would help our parks.
Well, I just said to Mike offline, Metro just got a new parks maintenance bond levy. So, I mean, that's the first place to start.
I think that's a great comment, and I definitely will pass that on through our negotiations because that's not
She will
lost.
make sure that's
not
included.
lost on Oregon City.
Yeah.
I do have a probing question. What would you say if this open space yard area was greatly reduced in the preferred design?
What was the question?
What would it be
Kind of-
reduced to?
I don't know. It's more of a pushing back
So, like
question.
more habitat?
Yeah, what if more habitat was created or more economic development was done in the yard area?
I like the significance of the Pioneer. You gave a perfect visual of the Pioneer Courthouse Square, and this is another little. What do they call that? Portland's downtown
Living
Is this-
room.
Their living room. Thank you. Is this going to be our living room? You've got to make it big enough to host the downtown Christmas tree. Because right now we've already outgrown Liberty Plaza, so does that pushback work? Do you get what I'm saying? I would almost say bigger, if not smaller.
And I will say that's
agree.
something from not to sway anybody's discussion as a staff person, but I know that that's something that we often get questions as to sizing of spaces and where we can host events and activities within the system. So I'm glad you're thinking in that thought
And that's
process.
why the surface for me was concrete, because I see that as that downtown event space, whether you're putting giant tents because you're having a rose garden show there or it's in December and we need to run wheelchairs. Say the American ADA Society decided to host in Oregon City and we had 500 people with wheelchairs. Where are they going to go? if we had one of those pervious, not your side, but the brick, I'm imagining that brick with grass coming through, it's not going to work very well.
But
We have
also-
other natural areas.
The covered wagon.
Yes,
No, but-
you're right.
But also, we were talking about if you're going to do this in staging for money, that you need a place to raise money.
Yeah, you need an anchor or a hook.
Yeah.
So historically, this was a gathering place, right? For a lot of the tribes came to this area. So to me, we have, like I say, if I want to go see habitat and I want to be around that there's no, public, people, I can go to those places. Here, to me, it's a gathering place. I mean, there's enough habitat there, but I think if we can maximize the public access and gathering, I think that fits the tradition and the history of it.
I keep thinking of the statistic that it's the second largest waterfall to Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls has some pretty neat walkways. And, to think of the idea of reducing that living room space for a little more retail, we've got plenty of retail, and there's plenty of retail space on the site that, no, we need more open space. Event space.
Event space.
Event space.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to the next grouping. Again, this is the clarifier and the dance floor, the falls overlook. Here's a picture of it. Another picture. Again, this is looking at the white representation of space, not necessarily what could go there, but that blank canvas. Again, removing the clarifier completely. Task 1 is looking at the clarifier, so removing it completely. Option 2 is looking at theater in the round. So again, creating some type of sunken theater, amphitheater in that area. Option 6, spectacle. So again, the representation of the hot air balloon is just to kind of give some scope as to what it could be. The next option is a planter. So again, and it shows crossing pedestrian walking path across from the clarifier area to the dance floor area, and it does show again a walking path around the clarifier. And then the last option shows a landform. So again, building up the interior of the clarifier space into a mound, maybe giving a different perspective of the falls at an elevated surface and maintaining some habitat there. And again, this one does show as well the pedestrian bridge that possibly goes across to the dance floor area.
Yeah, I think the idea is all of the, well, not all, I think anytime you keep the clarifier, there's a goal to provide a secondary bridge access. It's really the only one the design team sees that the secondary bridge access goes away is the removal.
That's good to know.
Can you refresh my feeble memory? What's the diameter of that clarifier?
Oh gosh, I'm guessing here from just being out there.
It's about 20,000 square feet.
50
Yeah.
yards.
Is what I
I was
remember.
going to say 150 feet was my guess.
It's 160 feet in diameter.
Okay.
Not big enough for a velodrome.
Well, I think continuity of that bridge going across again, keeping that same continuity thing. So the continuity is important. So it's less the clarifier, but more this zone.
If you found out, and I know the Stillwater Science and Metro is definitely looking at each habitat area and really understanding kind of like what areas would we really get the bang for your buck, and like based on the habitat restoration, this would kind of a factor of X or Y improve the habitat for species. If we found out, and I don't know if this is the case, if this area would provide additional high-quality habitat, is it worth the removal of the clarifier? Or is the clarifier and its repurpose integral to the public access? Is that public access habitat conversation?
If you could put a bridge from land to the dance floor, then the clarifier could be.
Well, there's walk across the dam.
Well, I like the idea of a secondary access.
Yeah, I think there's always that question of there's going to be times when PGE will have to close access to the dam, but maybe not necessarily access to a secondary walkway.
And I've
unless-
walked it before, and it's not wide, and it's on the dam.
Mhm.
It's
Now-
not a quality walk
You may be able to get a wider. I mean, I think
unless you build up and.
we might be able to build the walkway just up on top of
Okay.
the dam, so it might be able to be wider in its
Okay.
final, but not all places. Correct.
I was watching a documentary on castles in Ireland, and one of them had I want to say double helix, but it was a way to get the army down, corkscrew down to the, I just thought of that maybe like some kind of interpretive thing where you wouldn't just fill it with dirt and plants, but you could do some kind of interpretive thing where you'd have a spiral walkway that would go down into it, and you could have displays or history things. Be very, kind of fascinating. People want to go down in there. But.
So maybe sort of the theater in the round, but more interpretive and experience-driven as opposed to performance-driven.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You could stop along the way and read reader boards. Or
I do know the design team is very excited about the concept of going through the clarifier, going into the clarifier, though there definitely is specifics with the PGE. There are requirements for the release of water and bringing people kind of below where the water is. So it's not that it can't happen, but there's a lot. It gets more complicated.
Yeah.
I tend to go back to both of your pictures with the one where there's a planter and the one where there's the mound, and keeping the clarifier. I mean, that one I totally envision walking around it again as a walkway, the bridge across. That's the important. Yes, you get some habitat restoration, and then the mound version seems like a great family picnic open space area. Again, with fantastic views, but that gets you kind of that waterfront park in Portland aspect where you've got the concrete along the edge and you step back a ways, lay out a blanket and a picnic.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in the hustle and bustle of the concrete living room in the zone prior.
So would you say there's consensus from this group that connectivity from the clarifier to the dance floor is important to have that pedestrian bridge, pedestrian access?
Yes.
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 Okay. Any other comments on the clarifier specifically before we move on to the other?
How deep is it? Do you know?
30 feet, I think.
Have you been out on a tour yet?
I haven't.
The problem with her tours is they're too short, and it's like with a fire hose. So it took me 2 complete tours with her, and then I'm like, oh, I get that.
What are you gonna do about that?
And it's not her fault. There's so much. It's so fascinating. I find myself looking like, oh.
So what we can do, we actually had tours closed a little bit this fall because PG was doing work on the dam. But it sounds like you are having some new members. I'd love to do another prac tour this right after the new year and kind of early spring, and when the water's still rocking and rolling. And
That'd be great.
we can all get our rain jackets on and get out there again.
I just need a little bit of notice so I can actually take the day
But
off or whatever.
we generally do them on Fridays from 2 to 4.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd never turned down another one.
Yeah, I've been on one, but I'd like to do it again.
Great. Okay, so moving on to the dance floor. Again, we're looking at materiality, what that's going to feel like. Should it have a cover? Should it be open air? What types of materials do you want to be used? What kind of feeling do you have when you're out on that space? And again, these are just to get the conversation started as far as the visuals.
So let me ask you for clarification: are you intending to build up above the deck that's already there? Is that
Could be.
Oh, okay.
Probably it's going to be harder to have access below the deck because PG is very uncomfortable about anybody being below their water line.
Okay.
Because in the sense that below is holding water back on the other side. So building above is much easier.
Okay. Well, I sure like the cantilever stuff.
And it has to be clear so that you can see straight
Right.
down, right?
Wait, what's that one at Grand Canyon with
Yeah.
that You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For me, I think for the experience I would want is open air, not covered.
I would agree.
What about, I know some people talked a little bit about the front part being open air, but the back part having a little small shelter element. Does that matter?
I wouldn't think so. I think you need to get out there and experience it, and if you can't, take an umbrella. I mean, this is Oregon.
Or
How many
pick
of
a
us
different
use umbrella
day.
or pick a different day? This is Oregon, though. I mean, most of us don't even have an umbrella in our car, probably. We just
They
get
don't
wet
sell
between-
umbrellas, do they?
Right, exactly. How you know you're visiting from out of state? They're carrying an umbrella.
But again, too, I think it goes back to my earlier statement of just feeling that power and just that raw power. And if you build something behind you or some kind of cover, you're losing that. That Niagara effect, right?
Well, and that was you hit what I was trying to think of was the sound. You're gonna mess with those things.
And if you build it behind you, then when you turn around, you wouldn't be able to see, the bridge.
clarifier.
Yeah, I mean, so you need to be able to see all the way downriver too.
Yeah.
not just the falls.
Unobstructed views,
block
I
the
think,
view
would
from
be
various.
a key. You don't want to put anything that would impede a view.
So we've kind of done this in a very, traditional way, and I know we're way over time, but are there any comments that have come up that don't neatly fall into these areas that we've talked about, or maybe comments that are in areas that are in that more homework area, or just things that you are really excited about or we're missing out on, or maybe you're worried we're not thinking about? So this is kind of more of a little bit of free-form comment.
After going through this exercise tonight, I think I'm ready for a good work session later. Of course, I'm not going to be here, but
We can come back as a citizen, provide input.
it takes me. You got to prime the pump to get my thinking going, and so I think it would be interesting to have some kind of a work session for this group, where you can spend the whole evening, rather than just part of an agenda, with many other things that are still here to deal with. I think that would be important.
I appreciate that input. In fact, I had no idea this was going to take this long, and it's extremely valuable, and I wish we could have talked about it longer and not felt like we need to look at other things in the agenda. So that, if you get into these points again where there's some questions.
There's still value in receiving the input. I mean, how quickly would they need to?
Well, I think it's this feedback loop. So this first feedback loop, the design team is coming in 2 weeks. And we're going to be closing this first round of the survey on December 7th, gathering that. We're going to gather up comments we've received from our stakeholders. We're having some on-the-ground stakeholder discussions. And then they're going to be getting us new information. So to me, if we want to have meaningful comment, we would want to do it in the January meeting.
So if we did a separate work session in early or mid-January?
Well, I think that I think that we need to know answers to some questions first, though, like, what's the goal of the meeting? Like, in this case, are you going to pose questions and you see it being a 90-minute event? Then let's address it that way. If that one is more refined and it's 30-45, then we can keep doing it in these meetings.
Yeah, and I can tell you, we may not get designs yet that we can share with the public, but we might be able to ask additional questions to kind of get. You're probably not going to see anything new in January, but we could concentrate on additional places and maybe provide additional direction or questions.
Kind of like clarifications.
Yeah, since we've learned more from them, here are some more questions we
right, and I wouldn't imagine that going as long.
Yeah,
Probably.
I mean, I can come back in January. That's not.
And we can always start at 6:30 as well, and just stretch a meeting.
Yeah.
So just a comment for me. I'm really excited to kind of visualize this in my head. Portland has done a pretty good job of kind of combining different spaces and drawing different people to those spaces. But I think we have an opportunity here to provide something that nobody else has. You've got the roaring waterfalls, you've got a quiet area for dining, you've got a gathering space, the idea of a Pike's Place market concept. I think there's an awesome opportunity here to provide something that no other city in our area has. It'd be a great place for our city and citizens, and a draw for people outside of the city as well. So just comment.
So I think as we go into January, between some emails, we can kind of work it out whether we need a separate meeting or an enhanced meeting, or if it'll just fit.
So maybe I'll work with the chair and vice chair on determining kind of best approach.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. And I encourage you in the next couple days, go click on rediscoverthefalls.com if you've not done it, and you can take your own survey. It's a little bit different than this one, but it does have some of those materiality comments, and then there's some more multiple choice questions.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. So moving to the next one, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I spoke with Evan, in fact, have been speaking with him during the meeting a little bit, but he wasn't quite ready to come tonight. They're looking at meeting next Monday at about 2:30 on site at the VFW, Christina and Phil, with the memorial designer, and that will be his first time on site. So it'll be very rough, get some ideas, kind of share with him the site. So you're both welcome to attend. Not necessary.
Monday at 2:30?
Monday at 2:30 at the VFW. And then Evan wants to bring the product of that to the January meeting and give us a 10-minute brief.
Okay. You can invite Trevor. You can invite Trevor.
So moving on to general business, Clackamat Park boat ramp update.
So, Clackamat Park boat ramp was, again, as you know, just as a recap, getting us up to speed. Recommendation again of the Marine Board to move the boat ramp down 350 feet. The PRAC board did vote to pass on recommendation to the commission to move the boat ramp and to begin work on what the upland design might look like. The Marine Board was looking for a support letter from the commission stating that they supported moving the boat ramp before the end of the year. At the most recent commission meeting, we did bring a draft version of the letter, which stated that there would be support from commission with the reservation that they were concerned about the upland development and loss of potential green space in that area. The commission felt that they weren't in a position to support moving the boat ramp at this time and wanted to make further considerations as to what options were. So at this point, staff is working with the Marine Board on determining next steps, what that might look like. The commission had some other concerns as it related to the overall vision of Clackamat Park, the additional property next to the McDonald's across the street, with the construction of the Cove project and the development of the Willamette Falls project, what all of those pieces might look like and how that might affect, the use of Clackamat Park. So we're working on next steps. I don't have anything other than that to share at this time, but as we do have information, I'll definitely keep you up to date.
And if you want to listen to a great discussion, you should pull up that city commission meeting and listen to that, because I sat out there and it was pretty fascinating. But they had a lot of the same concerns we had. We were told, don't think about the upland, just think about the placement of the boat ramp, and that's all we were thinking about. But it is true when you start thinking about park impact. That's a tough one.
So your summary is, it sounds like we're all kind of on the same page, generally
yeah,
speaking.
I think so. But
That's good.
They brought up a lot of things, so it would be good for you to pull up that meeting and listen to that 90-minute discussion. I'm not sure it was quite that long, but it was.
It was longer than we anticipated, but yes.
Was Christina leading it?
What was the date of that meeting so I can go back and look?
Yeah.
It was the November,
a
mid-November.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I'll find it on the agenda.
third Wednesday of November.
And if you go to the agenda and click on the agenda, it takes you,
Yeah.
the video will
Right.
take you approximately to that part.
Well, I think it's really wise to try and tie all those things together with the Cove and of course, the park, the RV park, and the Willamette Falls all impact each other. All the planning should consider those things. I think that's a good decision.
Great. Okay, let's move on to park exclusion and tobacco-free park ordinance update.
So the commission did pass the tobacco-free parks as well as the exclusion ordinance, and those both go into effect tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, officers have the ability to make exclusions from parks for a first offense 30 days, second offense 90, third offense 180 days. And so we're pretty excited that gives another tool again in the toolbox for them to deal with compliance issues and reoffense issues, which we're seeing quite often in our parks. As far as the tobacco-free parks ordinance, we've been working on developing a press release and additional signage. Our parks team is working on a signage package and what that will look like, and we'll have some updates hopefully within the next 2 weeks that we'll start doing a little bit more of a marketing campaign on the website and things like that. So I'll be looking for that information.
And that's another good discussion to listen to.
When you post that to the website, when you make those up, would you just kind of send a link out to everybody to
Definitely.
kind of remind us that it has occurred? Okay.
That's an issue where our fingerprints are all over that one.
Yes.
Our recommendation to the city commission. So that was great work, gang.
Yeah, it was. Good idea.
I thought so.
Ladderette Park update. So this would be after their event at the pool.
Yeah, so they did have mid-November an open house, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I know some of you were present. They had a lot of energy around the project, and they were looking at not only, again, Ladderette Park, but building community in that neighborhood and what that might look like as far as just putting on additional events to bring folks into the park and to really see what it is. They're also looking at possibly doing some street art within the neighborhood on a couple of different street corners. So they have said that they would like to come back to PRAC and present. They're looking at having a conceptual drawing that will be done by the consultant that will be brought forward at some point. To again initiate that discussion and talk about next steps.
Right. Okay. Any questions? PRAC outreach event for 2017. I'd like Mike to kind of take the ball on this one and maybe step back to the original goal as a start. When it first came up.
The original goal of
Parks
of
Day.
Parks
When
Day?
that first thing came up.
Okay.
How did this start?
Well, okay. Goes back to my previous time on PRAC, and like Bob mentioned earlier, I was shocked to find out that there are 37 park spaces in the city, and I bet you couldn't get one person out of 50 to come within 10 of that number if you ask them about it, because I don't think we do a very good job of publicizing our park system. And so the original idea when I first suggested the Parks Day was, with the support of other community groups, where there might be a different activity in several different parks, a different civic group at a park, and so that there would be a day where people could go to several different parks, maybe with some sort of activity that tied it together, like a scavenger hunt or the stamp thing that they do at National Night Out. Just to try to promote our entire park system. Primarily because of staff time and PRAC member time, it was never able to turn into that. And I read about Okay, so that's enough of that? Is that enough of the history?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm good.
So then I read about the wonderful success that Portland has with their Sunday parkways. Is that what they call it?
Yep.
And I thought, okay, so we do 2 or 3 parks with a walking route or a biking route. And then I started thinking about all the groups that would be, I thought, interested in that. The Trail Alliance. First City Bicycles. Another plug for you, huh?
Right, there you go.
The Natural Resources Committee, and the Parks Foundation. And it seems like that's something that a lot of different groups could rally around.
Service organizations. Too,
Service, yeah,
Lions and-
right. Service organizations, the Bike Concierge, Clackamas
of
County
Trees.
Tourism. The more you think about it, the more groups there are that I think would be interested in something like that.
VFW on the Promenade.
Yeah, and it, as it gets bigger, it obviously gets more complicated and harder to manage, harder to pull off. Takes more money, takes more time. The Parks Foundation, I will tell you, we had our board meeting Tuesday night, and we did talk about it, and the foundation is interested in being a part of it. And if I'm speaking out of turn, one of the rest of you speak up. But the foundation is a very small group of people, and the one thing we have less of than people is money. So, but the other side of that we were excited about as a foundation, we've started talking about what some of our goals are for next year, and one is to get more people involved. And this would be a tremendous way, I think, to expose not only the park system, but the Parks Foundation to the greater community. So I think there's a lot to be gained from it. Can we pull it off? I don't know. And maybe it bothers me to say here we are on December 1st, but maybe we can't do it next summer. Maybe it has to be another year out because we're all volunteers. Unfortunately, for at least another 2 years, I'm working Monday to Friday days in Northwest Portland, and a lot of those kind of contact things that need to happen with these other groups and businesses and potential sponsors and whatnot, that I'm not here to do. So, have I rambled enough? I went back. I listened to the video. I appreciated everybody's comments based on that letter that I did. And Joyce, I heard what you said about traffic. But I think we're talking about one Sunday afternoon and, between 2 or 3 parks, maybe. So, maybe it's not that big a deal. But again, you're going to need Public Works involved. You're going to need the police department involved. It could real quickly become A, very cool event, and B, really hard to do.
And expensive.
Yeah. But also I think a lot of sponsorship opportunities too.
Well, and I wondered, so I left that last meeting, and the one part that bothered me about it was the way the Sunday Parkways thing and the closing of the roads, and I was wondering if you took that out of it, that one component, and you added more parks, and you basically had each service organization volunteering at a park. And so, if we listed them off, there's probably 10 groups: the Elks, the VFW,
Rotary.
Lions, Optimus, Chamber,
Scouts.
and the Scout, and the amount of volunteers really adds up pretty easily. That's the easy part. What I don't know is what that hook is that ties them together. But could you get a group to say, I'm going to sponsor this park today and I'll be there with a table? Because I see where you're going with it. My problem is I don't know how to tie all of those spokes together yet. But I like your idea.
To me, the only way to tie it together is with some sort of walk or bike event. Otherwise, why would somebody take the time to go to those different ones? And that's what I thought. That's why I thought the Parkway idea and what they do with that is is what does kind of tie it together and make it so that the original idea of Parks Day could work, because we're giving people a reason to want to go from one to the other.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking, if you had some traffic controls more like at a school.
Yeah.
Like could you start an event at Chapin and work across the plateau towards Rivercrest, and then somehow get down to 2 or 3 in the McLaughlin, and then end on Main Street.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but
Hood to Coast, how many thousands of people, walkers and runners, and they don't close any streets anywhere.
That's the
So
coast,
it can be
because
done.
you got the entire beach.
I'm talking about, they come through
Lodge.
Portland. They go right past my
the
office.
Hood to Coast.
Yeah,
All
Yeah,
right.
Hood to Coast. They go right in front of my office on Front Avenue, and they don't close any streets. So it can be done with some sort of traffic control.
Yeah. The other thing, and I don't know if we said it in the meeting, but I tend to see your pain of could you get this off the ground in 2017, and maybe you make the conscientious decision at your January board meeting, yes or no. But if you say no, apply for a Metro grant for a small amount, and then there's your funding for 18, and now you've got 18 months. And then nobody's looking at it as a daunting task, but actually we've got a little bit of breathing room. Because I don't think anybody's looking at us saying, do we need to do Parks Day this year? Nobody's going to be, well, what happened to that? That was a fantastic event.
They'll want the movies for sure.
The movies in the parks are still
The movies
occurring.
for sure.
Right.
But the parks,
Right.
Parks Day.
Yeah, we're not going
And then
to disappoint many people.
right, and then you relaunch with this different
Yeah.
goal. So I'm kind of hearing, am I hearing a consensus though that as far as PrAC, we're out of Parks Day this year?
Well, I thought the last time we talked about this, we kind of talked about this isn't going to happen until 2018.
Right.
It's going to take too much planning to come up with a concept that why do this? What do you mean? Why should I walk to another park or drive? Or there's got to be something to go there for. I mean, if they're going to show up at our booth for the foundation, they're just going to show up. Oh, hi! Well, there's got to be something.
But I
going
still
on.
think that we need a presence at the concerts in the park and at the movies in the park with good maps to hand out to families and say, look, here are the 37 parks in Oregon City. Well, let's take out the cemetery, all right, because you probably just don't want to visit that with your family. But
Halloween.
You'll be there soon enough.
I don't judge.
unless you have a reason for going there. Although there's a lot of great historic stuff
There is.
to go and find at the cemetery, but they don't allow my dog. But and I understand that part. But just getting the word out. Where are these parks in Oregon City? The people that interviewed, Bill Daniels is probably the only one that could name,
Right.
at least half of the parks in Oregon City. But there's still, getting the word out. And so if we're not doing it at a Parks Day event, getting people to go from park to park to park, maybe it just needs to start with some kind of a brochure that, has a little time and date that they visited the parks. And, bring those to the First Friday film or something that...
Like a Ben Dale Trail.
Yeah.
I think that maybe a way to do it is through the neighborhood associations, and if there's a proclamation from the mayor that this is Parks Day, and go out to your parks. It's kind of like stopping and turning the lights off to look at the stars, kind of a thing. That would be the easiest way to do it, because we're not having to, try to set up people at points to try to take care of things. I mean, that some kind of first step like that, so that that people knew that this is Parks Day, or whatever we're going to call it, the other name, and then kind of morph into some other. It will give us time to do something.
We could also set up a booth at Saturday Market a couple of times, and 3 or 4 events like that would really serve to get the word out.
Well, I mean, the foundation was setting booths up, and we were trying to get word out through that venue. So there is a venue, sort of. We haven't done it for a few months now.
Yeah, I
but,
know. Yeah.
But if that is a way to get the word out, and people were very interested in coming and talking to us about the different parks and looking at. They were very interested in that big map. That was a big draw. People, oh yeah, this is where I live, and this is my park, and
that worked well at at the farmers market, and did not work well at one of the concerts. Remember, we did the concert and we didn't have anybody stop and talk to us.
Well,
But
and
anyway,
and just
those
like
kind of events,
just like it did in that the movie night.
Right.
I mean, when every time the kids were interested in going, there's a lot of kids there, mostly kids, and they wanted to go see the movie. They didn't want to talk to us.
It's interesting for me to hear that the Saturday market was the bigger draw. I see that, but I wouldn't have guessed that. I see it now.
Well, how was National Night Out? Because didn't you have
I think the market did better than National Night Out.
National Night Out was not all that great either. We weren't giving anything away. I don't think you get anybody to stop at National Night Out unless you're
next to us
giving
was
things
giving
away.
things away, and everybody was going to them and not even talking to us.
Our Lions Club, one of our things is diabetes, and so we had a Strides program that we developed and had a booth at we still do that every once a month at the farmers market. But one of the things that we developed was a way to incentivize kids to exercise 30 minutes a day, and so we had a chart that would go for the summer, and each day that they exercised 30 minutes a day, walking or biking or whatever, they would circle that date. And then for each, and then we tied in on the backside, you get extra points if you visit a park. So you check off which park you visited, and so that incentivized them to visit, to get familiar with the parks. So then for each day that they exercised 30 minutes a day or they visited a park, they would get raffle tickets, and they would put them into a big bowl. And at the end of the year, we had probably about 24 prizes that we gave out. I mean, skateboards, bicycle, skates, a number of things like that, razors, and not razor blades, but those little scooter things. Anyway, Fred Meyer gave a bunch of stuff to us, and so we had at the end, like in November, we had like a party at various places, and we'd give out the awards, and so.
All right. Shall we move on from this one?
Yep.
All right.
to be revisited?
Yeah. PrAC member position opening, annual election of officers. So I brought this up last year. That was the first year we had done this, where another board I sit on, we just throw out the month before elections any nominations, or it gives you an opportunity to think and discuss if you want to. If there aren't any, we can move on to member position openings. So that's what it's for. Okay, nobody's jumping on that. Let's go to PrAC member position openings. So we have 3 open positions and 5 candidates. Chris being the one not in your stack because we just didn't choose to interview him as well. Oh yeah, it's because you were filling it, like he got stuck in the position.
Yeah.
That was.
I was on the pilot basis there.
Right. You're right, trial basis.
Trial basis.
He was the new kid. We didn't know.
That's right.
Which also quickly brings up a point of clarification as far as bylaws. There's been some discussion in the past regarding, is it 2 full terms before you're term limited, and so in other words his first year did not count. That's the way the city commission works if you've been appointed.
Yeah, that would be, that's my interpretation of it as well.
It hasn't been exercised that way in
up.
the past, but we're thinking that that's the way we should go in the future, and so he would really be the first one to go that route.
Okay, because that is different.
Yeah.
Because I did part of a term and then was term limited off after a full term.
Right.
I did too.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a rule. I think Doug brought it up that the commission does that, which was totally new to me.
I was at a meeting where each one had to be determined independently. Is that right? Where it wasn't automatic.
I'm not following you.
Well, like in my case, I would have had to have special permission to serve another term because the first one was only 2 years instead of 3, so I'd have 1 more year. But it would be
the term limits. So it's set up on a rotational basis so that we have 3 positions expiring every year. That way they cycle through at the same time. So if we had an individual who came on midterm as a fill-in, we as a committee probably wouldn't want them to continue forward, because then the cycle would be off and you'd have somebody, you'd have 4 people 1 year, 2 people the next year, and the current setup allows for some continuity of institutional knowledge as we're moving through.
And that's the way
I'm not sure what you said.
Well, that's why Chris's term is up this year, even though he's been
Just
on
1 year,
Yeah.
right.
Because we're not
Yeah.
automatically pushing that term out further.
Okay. There is a policy or a rule someplace. It was explained to me. Now, I'm fine in my case. I don't have any issue with it. I'm just, my understanding was there is a rule written, and in each case it has to be decided independently or at the time. Now, I could be wrong, but I heard that explained one night at a commission meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I can
something to-
follow up with
yeah,
the
just-
group and make sure that we're being consistent with the other commissions.
Right.
with
That's,
the
I
other
think, all
boards.
we're
Yep.
asking. Because I think that we didn't realize the commission did it differently than we did it.
Mhm.
And we've always, like Mike said, that's the way we've done it in the past.
Okay.
But I think it's worth discussing. And really, it doesn't affect anybody except for Chris now. Basically, would the last year count towards his first term or not?
So we have a couple years to worry
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's good to get that set down.
I would like to knock the easy one out of the way first and move that we recommend Chris for one of the openings.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that passes. Great. Okay. Any
That's
dis-
for the other 2 openings, right?
Yes.
And I want to make sure I understand. No more than 2 people per neighborhood association.
That's correct.
And Bill is McLaughlin,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Dakota is
Park Place.
Park Place.
As is Lisa
As is Lisa.
and myself.
And
And
Mike
as is
and
Chris.
Michael, I didn't catch. Is he South End?
No, Barkley.
Thank you.
Lisa's Park Place.
What's Mike?
And Michael was Barclay Hill?
Barkley.
Oh, Barkley, okay.
Okay.
So does that mean that we can't take anybody from Park Place?
No, we
Take
can
one.
take one
One.
of the 2.
Okay.
One more.
Because nobody else is, right?
And we're picking 3 out of 4, correct?
2 out of
2 out of 4.
2 out of
2
4.
out of 4.
So basically, what we're looking at now, Blaine, is Bob's position
Mhm.
and the empty seat.
Okay.
And these are both 3-year terms.
They're 3-year terms, right? We're filling them full.
And when is my term end? I think it's end of next year.
Oh, I did not bring that information with me.
Okay.
But
And I just say that because I am just absolutely overwhelmed right now, just beyond the pale.
Okay.
So I'm going to really try and stick it out, but I may need to bow out. And so if we have at least 3 good candidates, we might be able to fill that spot.
But that also opens up for an outside the city limits candidate
Right.
that we didn't have for interview and opening for that position.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, the bistro is just it's a yeah.
But we
So-
value your input, and we
Right.
appreciate your 2 to 3 hours once a month.
And you don't
Yep.
get to resign.
so yours
Well,
does
I'm
expire at
gonna
the end
try
of
to stay.
17.
I really am, so
So we get you for 12 more months.
12 more months. Okay. I do enjoy coming.
So we
No,
just
I
want to
don't
have a
get
kind
it.
of an open discussion about the candidates.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'll just weigh in first. Knowing that we can only have one more person from Park Place, and just thinking about my time over the last year and being the really new person, new to the city, it's been a great learning experience for me. Big learning curve. But I like the idea of embracing fresh blood and new ideas. With Dakota, we had a lot of passion around ideas. Biodiversity. She's a science student. Has some ideas or some vision around what our parks could be, which I really appreciate. I think number 2 would be Lisa if we had to choose between the two in Park Place. But I guess my 2 candidates would be Lisa and Michael. Again, Michael being new to the city, he has some perspective about Portland parks, what he liked, what he didn't like, what maybe he could bring. Very thoughtful answers when he was talking to us about that. Maybe a little too direct and pointed, but I think he has some good ideas.
Great. Thank you. What do you think, Roger?
I'm wait. I like to be at the end.
Nobody can hold you against anything. You're gone next month.
I know. I'm free at last. I like Lisa 1 and Michael 2.
Lisa 1, Michael 2, Bill 3, Dakota 4.
Is that what you meant, Chris? Lisa 1 and Michael 2?
I meant Dakota 1, Michael 2.
That's what I thought you misspoke there. Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. I thought I knew what you were going to say, and then I didn't.
And I'm sorry, Blaine, what was yours?
Lisa 1, Michael 2, Bill 3, and Dakota 4. Although I do like Dakota because she's actually one that really uses the parks. Mm-hmm. That's good to get that perspective.
Yeah, her perspective with a younger child, it gives an age variety from a user experience variety. Better way to put that.
So let me reverse. I'll put Dakota 3 and Bill 4. I mean, Bill has a lot of experience and a lot of background, but which would be valuable. But yeah.
You want me to say something, don't you?
Well, I guess I'll go with. I'll jump in and I guess I would go the Lisa, Mike, Dakota, Bill.
I think I agree too.
I'm going to say that between the 2 that are in the Park Place neighborhood, Dakota and Lisa, since I can't have both of them, I would probably go with Lisa. In that, I think she spends a little more, foot on the ground, and pedals on the bike.
Yep.
And
project management experience, and
has a dog, and I know how important that is to me. But both of them were very qualified, and I'd love to see Dakota get involved in other things with the city, and I know that we'll be reaching out to her for other volunteer opportunities.
Yep, Parks Foundation.
Foundation.
And as for the remaining position, Bill Daniels brings such a wealth of experience that might be in some ways missing, in that he has gone through a lot of the master planning for parks and things. My only concern would be, he's too McLaughlin neighborhood focused, but I think he could keep an open mind about that. And I just didn't feel like Michael had done as much of his homework of knowing what PRAC does and, spending time really watching what we do. So, you know, he said he's a team player, but I just didn't get that vibe. That was just, you know, again, that's the female perspective on this board tonight, anyway.
I think
So
Joyce
your
just
choice
con-
is-
I
I'm
think
sorry.
Joyce just convinced me on number 2.
So my top 2 would be Lisa and Bill.
Well, I would say I wanted to vote for Lisa and Dakota until the Park Place thing came up. I think Dakota will make a great foundation member for now, and possibly a candidate that, you know, generally, Phil, we hold on to these, and sometimes when we don't get enough, we call some of those people back, and she would be one of those to call back. But I would put Lisa ahead on that, and I'm really torn between Michael and Bill.
Yeah. Bill brings a lot. I mean, I could be persuaded to put him in the 2 spot.
I think everybody had Lisa 1, so it's
Except for Chris.
who's our
So-
pick for number 2?
No, and I'm okay with that. So
Okay.
based on the feedback.
So where to next, folks?
It sounds like there's some consensus around.
Do we want to do one at a time and vote one more in?
Well, look, it seems like we're choosing between having 2 people from the same part of town.
That's not possible
And,
now.
and that's why it had to be either Lisa or Dakota.
Well, I'm
Um,
talking about, we'll still have 2 people from the same part of town.
We can have 2. We just
All right.
can't have more than that.
Okay.
We can't have 3. And Chris is from Park Place.
Yes.
So that's the
Right.
one of the 2 ladies would be the second if we went that route.
It looks like between Michael and Bill.
One in Berkeley Hills and one in McLaughlin. And
Do I just want to do a show of hands between the 2, or
Well, I think we need to. Well,
so it sounds like Lisa's the next pick, right? There's
then
consensus
somebody
there.
can make a motion to do Lisa and get that off the table.
I'll move to elect Lisa.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And that takes Dakota off the table.
Yep.
Yep.
But we will contact her about the foundation for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Down the trail of life.
Did you hear that, Joyce?
no.
He said, "And the Trail Alliance."
I feel at a disadvantage meeting Michael and Bill for the first time tonight, so I don't know any of their histories except what I heard. So
Yeah.
I don't think any of us did.
I'm persuadable.
Well, and Bill's experience while in parks was operations, and if you will, we tend to not focus on operations. That's Phil's day job. So, you know, in Portland, we found in candidates for Phil's position that, you know, Portland is such a large bureaucracy. You can be very focused in one little element and not know a thing about the rest of the Parks Bureau, as opposed to here where you got to be a jack of all trades. Ask Denise.
Very true.
What is Michael's background? Do we know?
I have no idea.
He's a chiropractor.
What did you say?
Chiropractor.
Okay.
So could we get discounts?
I knew it was medical something. But
I did appreciate.
That's it, we get
in
discounts.
the notes I wrote down about Michael were community involvement. I mean, frankly, that's why I'm here. You know, I thought it was a way to give back to the community, and we've had several attorneys on the board before that had no park experience, but their input to the board was outstanding. Because really, what it's about is how are we representing the community, and leaving some of that operations to the experts. So.
You know, one of the things that Michael said to me kind of really stood out, and I never really thought about it in this way, but, you know, his statement was every park serves its community or neighborhood a different way. And it's really true. You never really think about it. You just, you know, a lot of people just think of a park as a green space. and each area or each neighborhood uses it for a different thing, potentially. And to me, that's a really good mindset coming in, knowing that each park is different in its own unique way. It's not just a department. It's not something you have to manage. I mean, as a whole, you have to think of each one individually.
Yeah, that was a good point. Really good point.
And Bill talked about volunteerism. And I thought that was good in terms of, he recognizes the issue of funding, the lack of, and he's got so much background though. I'm torn between, would he be? Could we really take advantage of his background and his skill set, or is it good to give new people a chance to voice and get involved? I mean, he's got a wealth of experience. He could choose just about any committee in the city and be a solid candidate.
And he has given input. That's where, on the one side, I can't think of the last time Berkeley Hills neighborhoods had representation here.
Did he say he served 4 terms on PrAC? Did I hear that right?
He did say that.
Wow.
And I would say he went off in probably 2003 or 4. Because he was off right at the end of Dee Craig. Literally, probably when she left was his last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Or right around there. And that was like my first year.
He knew about the off-leash dog areas in Oregon City and said they'd bound to be a real problem for us.
Well, I got the impression he didn't know much about them.
Yeah, I got the
He threw
impression
out
he
a
didn't know
topic.
that we had them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He brought it up, didn't he?
He brought it up that
Then
that's
nobody
a
knew we
potential
didn't have
issue
them.
and didn't know we had any.
Okay.
That's
He fooled me.
yeah.
You're talking about Michael? Or
No.
Bill?
No, Bill.
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 And I don't think he'd gone on the website. I think he was the first one that was like,
No, you're right. I wrote Dogs in Park Master Plan Update. The homeless one caught me. Bill's right.
Right.
That is probably our number one problem.
He mentioned funding, the funding issue.
I think that's probably in every parks
Yeah, that's
department.
true. That's true.
And the other thing is that Bill knows a lot about the metro area that we also work in conjunction with Newell Creek Canyon and the
Right,
Kanema woodlands up there too.
we certainly wouldn't go wrong with Bill. That's I think he'd be a real plus. I'm just torn between that and giving someone new a chance to get involved. So I'm torn.
So generally, we take motions for this. If somebody wants to make a motion towards one, and we can vote up or down, or some other method. We don't have to go home. I got this.
I'll move to elect Michael.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, Michael passes. Thank you, everyone. I have to tell you that I've been here when we had to change the bylaws from 9 to 7 because we couldn't get 9 people interested in participating.
Can we go the other way? Can we go?
Unfortunately,
9 to 8,
well, you could.
10?
I mean, if the commission would allow it, we could propose it. But it's been interesting for probably the last 8 years we've been able to do 9. Well, since about the time you started it, all of a sudden, maybe that was your doing.
Maybe so.
But about the time Mike came on, it switched to 9, and then it was a steady. You had equal or more candidates each time. So good things happening. So, any other general business? Anyone? Okay. Member reports.
I'll have to go last.
I was going to let you go last.
There you go.
All right. Oregon City Pioneer Center report. Number 1, we're scheduling the cleanup crew for landscaping and leaves to be picked up for the year. 2, we had a building walkthrough with maintenance person and Crandall to develop a 5-year and a 10-year equipment and building upgrade plan. 3, the Giving Tree had almost all the tags removed for the first week. 4, the food basket applications were handed out within the first 2 weeks. 5, the field trips are almost full for the winter months. And 6, there were 101 Thanksgiving dinners served with meal or 2 Meals on Wheels clients and 52 clients via the dining room. And that's pretty much what I have.
Do you have anything that you did that isn't Pioneer Center related?
Well, let's see. The Parks Foundation is collecting bottles to raise money for the parks, and we've been putting Dee Dee or Dorothy and I have been going. I've been helping her, and we're raising money for the parks via the Parks Foundation, and is starting to build up. So and.
Drop in for parks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I have a question on yours. When I saw yours between you and Phil, that 5-year plan, is that something of significance that maybe they might want to present to us sometime early next year? I know when we got into those types of plans with the pool, that was significant enough to bring here. We were all aware of the deficiencies and how they were going to address them, and I'd be very curious. Or is this more just maintenance?
No, we can definitely bring them in and chat a little bit about it if that's of interest to the group. I think at that point, the facilities were in really dire need of repair and maintenance. There's a lot of deferred maintenance issues. They have been mostly brought up to where they probably need to be in the process. The 5-10 year planning process is more in line with maintaining appropriate levels of care. Which is something that might be of interest to the group to kind of just have a discussion about methodology and how the staff
go
about doing the business that they do. So it's Denise working with Ann Crandall, who's our facilities maintenance.
Because periodically, once every year to 18 months, and it's been a long time, we'll get various department heads will come in and give a brief report. And the last time I can't remember who it was.
Last year.
Was it last year? But it was fantastic. All the statistics just shocked me. But it seems like this might tie into that. So if we do one of those sometime in 2017, we can tie the two together.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
And then with Rochelle with the pool, another month. And it's been a while, hasn't it, since we okay. I'm just thinking maybe it was me. So that just raised my question when I saw that plan. I thought, what would that be?
So I attended the Willamette Falls Legacy Project visioning that they had up at Clackamas Community College, and got into one of those discussions where we got to do hands-on with those placemats and put little pictures down. And so it was really a lot of fun to do that, and I'm interested now in going online and just putting in my opinion again from my perspective. But what I found most fascinating was hear other people's perspectives at that meeting. And then spent several hours at the Girl Scout Troop Ladderette Park visioning. I wasn't able to make it on that Friday night, so I went down Saturday at noon thinking I would just spend an hour down there, and spent 4 hours, and Sunday I spent another 4 hours with them. And it's really exciting to see the young people's excitement about something happening at that park. And I think that there was enough energy there that not only do they have kind of a plan for the park, but because they were successful at getting that grant, they are looking forward to getting more grants to keep on going. And so let's just keep sending positive energy their way. Go Girl Scouts.
So not necessarily a member report, but a member concern is I keep driving by parks now at night and seeing cars parked in the parking lots. And it just seems really concerning for me. Are they drug deals? Are they homeless? Cars didn't quite look homeless, or is there crime out in the dark areas of the parks? And I pulled into one park because the car was clear up over a planter. I took pictures of it and sent it to Jonathan Waverly, and he actually said that he had had some vandalism in that park. I don't know if they ever tied the two together, but then I go home and I stew about this and I stew about it more, and I think as an Oregon City taxpayer that the police department and the parks department, they're all city employees, and I hope that that they recognize that as just another city building or a city property. And when it's slow, go through those parking lots as well as my neighborhood. I mean, I really appreciate when I see them on my security camera turning around in my driveway, which happens rarely, but it makes you feel good. But I wonder if those parks are getting that treatment, because something's going on, and I don't know what it is. It just seems odd. I can't think why at 40 degrees would there be 2 or 3 cars, for example, in Wesleyan parking lot at 8 o'clock at night. It's wet, it's raining, it's cold. What are they doing? Doesn't make sense to me. It's not recreation. It doesn't sit well. So
Could be recreation.
Probably.
And moving on to Mike.
How do I follow that? So I went to the same Willamette Falls event that Joyce talked about, and it was terrific. They did a great job. It was a fun activity to get. Other than just throw out your ideas, you're actually moving pieces of paper around and building this thing. It was cool. The city will be working on the next 2-year budget starting in the spring. So to whatever extent we want to look at PRAC goals and where we think the city should be spending its money related to parks, we need to be thinking about that at our next meeting or two so that we can get our input where we need to. The other thing, if you don't take the Oregon City News, you can go online and see this. This article yesterday headlined, "Good Could Come Out of Ed Lindquist's Sentence," and it's a community soapbox thing written by Jerry Herman, who I think we all know of. And he basically is talking about the unique geological features of Waterboard Park and saying that we should use Mr. Lindquist's deep governmental experience to establish, and he calls it Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries Interpretive Park. And then later on he calls it the Waterboard Park Natural Heritage Area. And he gives his phone number to anybody who's interested in that effort. So I'm sure we'll probably hear from him at some point. Trying to... Natural heritage, yeah. Because I'm not going to get into the details, but he talks about a lot of the unique features that are going on, slide related, in that park that really are unique.
Yeah, I thought it was very well written.
What was the date of that?
Oh, yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
In which paper?
The Oregon City Review
right,
News. Oregon City News?
I'll look it up online at work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah, it's in the online.
I was actually going to bring up the Lindquist thing.
And I just want to recognize and thank Bob Burns for his service. It's been great to get to know you. I wish I could have spent more time with you, but I appreciate your input and your perspective. And anybody who hasn't spent any time with Bob and talked to him about some of the things in his real job past.
My checkered past?
You should. He's not checkered past, but Bob has a very interesting past that we should all know more about.
I went to lunch with Bob once, and I agree.
I'm talking about your Dallas experience.
Yeah.
Oh, Dallas, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Very good. I agree. I went to lunch with Bob once. And I think somebody told me to ask him that.
Yeah.
What did I do in Dallas?
Well, first didn't you say you bought 300 school buses in the first week?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Yeah,
I was listening.
What happens in Dallas stays in Dallas.
You won't want to say this, but do you mind if I just give a 2-sentence?
Fine. You already...
I already
can't
broke
say
it.
no.
I already broke it. No, it's tremendous. Bob basically was brought in to integrate under federal court order the Dallas, Texas school district, and bought 300 school buses and set up a plan and integrated the Dallas schools. Wow. So, anyway.
I was told I couldn't tell my children what I did.
Yeah, that's
For
the
their
part
safety?
That's the part that stuck out to me. I remember telling my wife that.
It was a very interesting year, and that is true. They were given 3 years to totally integrate the Dallas public schools, and Sarah T. Hughes was the federal judge that gave the order, and they brought in a lot of Yankees to work on this, and people from New Mexico, Oregon, Washington, East Coast, all on this transition team. And it was really, really interesting work. And I met some of the greatest people from Dallas that you could ever want. They were ready, they were eager, and really behind the program. So, but interesting year.
What year was that?
It was 19. I got to think. 1973, 4. 73, 4. Yeah.
Fascinating.
We bought 300 school buses in one bid. And the first year was to work with the parents and community on the program. The second year was to work with the staff, get all the staff special training in how to act and react and perform. And the third year was to move the kids. And I'll never forget that experience. It was amazing. Yeah. But that's my report.
How about you, Blaine?
Well, just a couple of things. One thing, and it might relate a little bit to the parkways, but one of my goals is to ride a bike to every park, and I've got 10 knocked down. So, but I'd be willing to do like some, if I ever go out, like when it gets warmer, and just announce out to people if they want to go for a bike ride. We could hit as many parks as we can just for fun.
That'd be
So
fun.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
enjoy that.
might be a way to get the juices
You're right.
going and
enjoy
get things
that.
going. So
Can I keep up?
oh, easy. Yeah.
Trust me, you're in better shape than I am.
Also, the Cove Abernathy Trail, John Lewis, we took ODOT folks down, and then he later brought UP, the Union Pacific folks down to see if there couldn't be a way to connect the Cove area with the Abernathy, the bistro, and all that. I haven't talked to John lately, but my sense of it is it's kind of on hold. It's looking through the trails map and the trails plan, rather, master plan, and it's a big deal, and it would cost a lot of money, and it seemed to be the consensus was an up and over would be the best because UP is pretty protective of it, but I think it'd be really huge to get some connectivity there. But anyway, that's that. The Trail Alliance is working through it. It does relate to our parks, but we are working through really starting to focus on the trails plan, which I think was done in 2004. And they've listed out a whole bunch of priorities and trails that can be worked on, and so we're going to try and own that and support the city in that. So let's see, First City Central, the bistro at the train station should be open in a couple of weeks. If we may make a decision to say let's just hold it off until the first of the year. There's a lot of details. We're just racing like crazy to get it all done. And so, yeah, that's why I said I was a little bit overwhelmed. It's pretty crazy. And then there's a rumor going around. This doesn't necessarily relate to parks, but it does sort of, but indirectly. But there's been a rumor going around that we use the word liquidation, bicycle liquidation on the front of the window at the bike store. And so I've had several people say, I'm really sorry. For what? You're going out of business. It's like, no. So we scratched that off. So,
You're in.
so we're still in. So
Yeah.
we're still in business. So yeah.
Just trying to move some bikes.
You're
Move
in
some bikes.
liquidation, that's all.
Yeah.
Lock stock.
Yeah.
So nothing parks related yet, I don't think, but I don't know if any of you noticed public notice signs went up on a piece of property just east of Holcomb Elementary. It's on the north side of Holcomb. And it looks like that land was cleared a couple of years ago, the timber, so it looks like they're getting ready to develop it. So I know my neighbors are asking about it. I'm sure that the question of, is that mean a new park for the area, which of course will point them toward the master plan and things like that. So anyway, just something to be aware of. It looks like that's going to be developed soon. And of course that brings up a lot of questions about the sidewalks and drainage and everything on Holcomb, which is kind of a challenge now, so, and the traffic. Anyway.
Well, I took some time today to jot down a few notes, so I'm really sorry to leave this committee. I've enjoyed my 2 terms, I think 5 years, I believe, and it's been a great experience for me. PRAC has had a major voice in many areas involving decisions at the City Council for Oregon City regarding parks and other things. And I wanted just to cite a few. I was thinking today that as we sit here, it seems like nothing ever gets done. You just on and on and on, and it seems like, watching paint dry sometimes. But looking back 3 or 4 years, it's amazing what has happened and the progress that we have made. For example, we've been involved in the final design plans for new city parks. We worked on the design plan for the new Oregon City Library. And we had a major input on the final plan, 1-story versus 2-story. How do we preserve park space? And our recommendation worked its way all the way through. We created a policy for off-leash dog areas in city parks on a trial basis, and I'm sure sometime soon there'll have to be some kind of a review of that policy to see if it's permanent or if it has to be changed some way. The non-smoking policy in city parks was a biggie. I really appreciated that, and I thought we should always stand up for healthy living and set examples for children and youth of the community. The location of the boat ramp at Clackamas Park, we weighed in on that, and the idea was to preserve parkland. And having a boat ramp is fine, but just don't have it at the expense of this beautiful parkland. And of course, that agenda is still going on. The relocation of the Medal of Honor monument for Larry Dahl. Those ideas, I'm not sure they started here, but with Sean and Doug, they really carried the ball on that. And there could be some discussion about where it ended up, but no question it's in a much better place. It's in a much better place. And I, for one, learned a lot about Larry Dahl, all the way from 4 or 5 other Medal of Honor winners to, I think the final tally was 13. And when we started out, we didn't know of any family members. Turns out his son was here at the memorial, at the reckoning, the recognition event. So that was a great learning experience, and good things happened, even though there may have been other sites. One we haven't talked about for a long time is our partnership with the high school construction class. And hopefully that contact will remain in place. They have a new instructor there. I haven't met the person, but maybe some of you have. But that's a very valuable program for the city and for the school district. And hopefully that continues. And finally, the work on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project and Riverwalk that's just getting underway and will be huge for the city of Oregon City. And once again, we're going to be directly involved in that. So
input on Newell Creek too.
And there are a lot of others that I didn't, but you're correct. They're in the Newell Creek program, Akanima Falls, and many others. In all of these projects, PRAC has had a major influence. We've had ideas, we talked about them, we presented them forward, and more often than not, they saw light in future decisions. So I'm very proud of the work that we have done, and I wish you all well in the future. With Phil at the leadership post, can't go wrong. Thank you very much.
You want to follow that?
And I don't know. I think we just everyone walks off after mic drop, right? So I'd like to echo everyone else's sentiment. Bob, thank you so much for your time volunteering for this committee. It's through service like yours that we're able to do the work that we can do as a group, and we're that much better having had you represent the community. So again, thank you. And I realize I didn't get enough time having the opportunity to work with you, but I heard nothing but fantastic things from all of the staff about your involvement and the work that has happened over these last few years, and what an asset you were for the city. So we appreciate your time and commitment.
Thank you. I gotta find something else to do.
Only for a year.
You can come.
Only for a year.
That's right.
Listen in, and maybe we could do a telephone conference. And you can pop,
Yeah.
pop a comment in now and then.
We'd like to have you on the foundation.
I was waiting
I
for
have your number.
the recruiter.
Good job, Roger.
So moving on, I'll keep my comments short and sweet. The recreation report, you have received that through email.
I had a question on that.
Yes.
Okay, so down at the campground, are we keeping the campground open all winter?
Campground will be open until we're unable to maintain,
Okay,
depending
and
on
so
the level.
at this time, are there 2 park hosts down there?
We do have 2 park hosts
You have
currently.
2 park hosts, and they each take up 2 spots. So they're taking up 4 camping spots. That's what the staff report said.
That I'm not aware, so I'll have to follow up on that. I know we do have 3. One of them is leaving. We will be left with 2. The 2 that are remaining, I'm not sure how many spots they're currently occupying. I will say the occupation level, we're not looking at maxing out capacity.
Okay. I know that a couple times in the summer it was
Yeah.
maxed out capacity, so I
Yeah.
wonder about that. And are we keeping park hosts at all the other parks through the winter?
Currently, for the sites that do have them, yes.
Okay.
And then we have a couple of sites that, as if conditions don't allow us to have the RV park open, we will move and relocate park hosts to other parks that currently have vacancies available.
Okay, thank you.
And then the charter park update, with the commission schedule being very full, that was pushed back to January, so it'll be addressed at the January 10th work session, and then if it is pushed forward, again at the general meeting on the 18th.
Okay, so future agenda items. The only question was I emailed you this week maybe about the metro.
Yes. So I've been putting together a list of future agenda items, many of which you guys have pushed to January, February, as we have the additional members on and looking at timing with budgetary implications. So a couple of things as far as planning go that we have in future agenda items. We're looking at an updated presentation from Metro for the Newell Creek Trailhead concept. We had a meeting with them internally as staff this last week to talk about layouts and what that might look like. They have some planning things that they're trying to work through. So. Additionally, looking at working with planning to have them come out and present on the concept plans in Park Place, the South End, Beaver Creek. Also looking at the next steps for Glen Oak property. And so we have a couple of items that are lined up in the next couple of months.
Great.
That have to do
And
with planning.
is there any movement at all on Filbert Run? Are we just leaving that natural for now, or what's going on with that?
Correct. So right now, the Glen Oak property is being prioritized from a staff standpoint, being in a more park deficient area. Filbert Run being currently more accessible, even though it's not developed as a park. It is green space that is used for that purpose currently, versus the Glen Oak property, which is basically not accessible. A lot of invasive species and things like that limit the availability for use.
Okay.
But again, that's something that we can look at moving forward if that's a priority of PRAC, and if you have insights into how we should be prioritizing work, those are conversations that we can definitely have.
Okay.
Any other future agenda items from members that they would like to bring forward as we're developing agendas for January, February?
Nope, I don't think those. You already brought up budget. That was the only other one.
Another Girl Scouts plan on coming back. Right, we already have, once
Yep.
they get
Yeah.
their plan all
I
done.
think Evan will definitely be here on January, just based on the meeting next week. So I think that's, as you look towards juggling January.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you all January 26th, except for Bob. We'll see you in a year from now.
Okay.
See you next year.
I didn't hear a lot of confidence in that.
The good
No.
one, rise.